Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Cryptic Corpse. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious, where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world? Now find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Gabriel Thornfield. I'm 34 years old, and this will be my final performance. I wasn't always an artist. For many years, I served as a Catholic priest, finding comfort in prayer and helping others. But something was missing. I felt a call to understand suffering in a deeper way, to explore the holy power of hunger that saints and mystics wrote about. 7 years ago, I left the priesthood. My bishop thought I was having a crisis of faith, but it was the opposite. My faith had grown too big for the church walls. I needed to feel what the saints felt when they fasted for 40 days, when their bodies became thin as paper and they claimed to see angels. Now I live in a small cabin at the edge of Olympic National Forest in Washington. It's October 1979, and the forest is painted in red and gold. The perfect place for what I need to do. I set up my space carefully, a small cot near the window, my journals and art supplies on a wooden table, photos of people I can't forget pinned to the walls, children with swollen bellies and thin arms. I met them in Ethiopia when I was still a priest during the famine. I tried to help, but there was never enough food, never enough of anything. Gabriel's ribs had become a xylophone for angels, each bone singing hunger's holy hymn. I wrote that line in my journal last night. It feels important somehow. This morning, a deer came to my window. I gave her the apple I had saved for my breakfast. She ate it from my palm, her eyes calm and trusting. I stroked her soft nose and felt a strange connection. I believe all creatures deserve food more than I do. My hunger is a choice. Theirs never is. I've spent years studying those who starved for spiritual reasons. Buddhist monks who meditated without food for weeks. Native American vision seekers who fasted alone in the wilderness. I learned their practices with respect, always asking permission from tribal elders before borrowing from their traditions. Today marks the beginning of my most important work, a 40-day fast in this forest. I will document everything, how my body changes, what visions come to me, what truths I discover when there's nothing between my soul and the universe except thinning skin. People think my art is strange or extreme. Why starve yourself, they ask, but they don't understand that hunger opens doors. When your body empties, something else fills the space. Sometimes, when I'm deep in a fast, I talk to the children from Ethiopia. Their ghosts sit with me, watching with curious eyes. I beg their forgiveness for surviving when they didn't, for having the choice to be hungry when they never had a choice at all. Other artists come to me for advice. How do you transform suffering into beauty? They ask. I tell them that pain is just another language. You have to learn to speak it fluently. As the sun sets on my first day without food, I feel strangely calm. I've done this before, pushed my body to its limits, turned hunger into holy practice. But something feels different this time. The forest seems to be watching me more closely. The shadows move in ways they shouldn't. I shake off the feeling and light a single candle. 40 days from now, I'll emerge transformed. I always do. But tonight, as wind howls through the trees outside my cabin, I can't shake the sense that this fast will change me in ways I can't imagine. I pick up my brush and begin to paint what I see in my mind. A circle that eats itself, a snake devouring its own tail, over and over and over again. Day 7 without food. My stomach stopped growling 3 days ago. That's how it always goes. First the angry demands for food, then the quiet acceptance. My body knows the routine by now. I've set up my camera to take one photo each day. The changes are already visible. My face looks sharper, my eyes bigger. My watch slips around my wrist like a bracelet meant for someone else. This morning, I woke up confused. I could have sworn I heard someone walking around my cabin, but when I checked, there was no one. Just the forest and its many sounds. A trick of hunger, probably. The mind plays games when it's starving. I spend my days writing in my journal, painting, and walking slowly through the woods. Each step takes more energy than it should. I collect small stones, leaves, and twigs to create art pieces on my cabin floor. When I'm done, I take photos of them. Today, I found myself talking out loud to Ayana, a little girl I met in Ethiopia. She was only 6 when the famine took her. In my mind, she sits across from me, her big eyes watching as I arrange pine needles in a spiral pattern. "Why do you hurt yourself?" she asks in my imagination. "To understand," I answer, though no, one is really there, to feel what you felt. "But I never wanted to be hungry," her ghost voice says. The truth of this hits me hard. My hunger is a choice, a performance. Hers was a tragedy. I drink water from the stream near my cabin. The cold shocks my system. Sometimes I catch my reflection in the water, a thin man with hollow cheeks. Day by day, I'm disappearing. On day 12, the dreams begin. Vivid dreams that feel more real than waking. In one, I'm walking through the forest at night, following someone who looks exactly like me. But when this other Gabriel turns around, his eyes are black pools and his mouth is too wide, filled with sharp teeth. I wake up sweating despite the cold. Something feels wrong about this fast. Different. In the past, my hunger brought clarity, peace. This time, it brings a strange sense of dread. I check my calendar, marking off another day, but something odd catches my eye. A mark on tomorrow's date. Did I make that? I don't remember doing it. The mark looks like a tiny drawing of a person. It wasn't there yesterday, I'm sure of it. When I step outside to gather more water, I notice strange tracks in the mud. They look human, but not quite right. Too long, too deep. The forest feels darker today, even though the sun is shining. By day 15, I'm spending most of my time in bed. My strength is leaving faster than it should. I've done this before. I know the patterns of starvation. This feels accelerated somehow. I hear whispers at night, voices that might be the wind, might be my imagination, might be something else entirely. They seem to come from just outside my window. When I look, nothing's there. "Time isn't what you think it is," one whisper says. "You've been here before," says another. I tell myself it's just hallucinations from the hunger. That happens during long fasts. The brain, deprived of sugar, creates phantoms. But on day 18, I find something that can't be explained away so easily. A page in my journal that I don't remember writing. The handwriting is mine, but the words make no sense. I am the beginning and the end. I am the hunger and the feast. I've been here before, and I'll be here again. The circle never breaks. Below the words is a drawing of a man who looks like me, but with something wrong about his proportions. His arms are too long. His face is too thin. His eyes are just empty circles. My hands shake as I turn the page. I don't remember drawing this. I don't remember writing these words. That night I dream of Ethiopia again, but this time the starving children point at me in fear. They run away screaming. When I look down at my hands, they're not my hands anymore. They're something else, something hungry. I wake up to find myself standing in the forest with no memory of how I got there. The moon is full and bright. In the distance, I see a figure watching me. It's me, but not me. Not anymore. Day 25 of my fast. Something is very wrong. I keep finding things I don't remember doing. Yesterday, I discovered a new sculpture in the corner of my cabin. A twisted figure made of twigs. And my own hair. I have no memory of making it. The strange notes in my journal continue to appear. Some are written backward, some make no sense at all, but they're all in my handwriting. I'm losing track of time. Sometimes the sun seems to jump across the sky. I'll blink and hours have passed. Other times, the same minute seems to stretch on forever. This morning, I woke up to find mud on my feet, as if I'd been walking in the forest while I slept. There were leaves in my hair. You're just confused from hunger, I tell myself. This happens during long fasts. But deep down, I know this is different. This isn't like my other fasting performances. I decide to document what's happening. I set up my camera to take photos. Every hour, even while I sleep. Maybe the pictures will help me understand. On day 27, I develop the film. What I see makes my blood run cold. In the photos taken at 2 a.m., there's someone standing over my bed while I sleep. The figure is blurry, but it looks just like me, only thinner, almost skeletal. In the 3 a.m. photo, this other me is touching my forehead. By 4 a.m., I'm alone again. This isn't possible, I whisper to the empty cabin. But the photos don't lie. Something is happening that breaks the rules of reality as I understand them. That night, I fight to stay awake. I sit in the corner of my cabin, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, watching the door. My body begs for sleep, but I refuse. Just after midnight, I hear footsteps on the porch. Slow, dragging steps. The door handle turns. I hold my breath. The door swings open. No one is there, but the door stands open. Cold night air flowing in. Then I see footprints appearing in the dust of my floor, one after another, as if made by invisible feet. They come straight toward me. I scramble back, pressing against the wall. The footprints stop just inches from my own feet. "What are you?" I whisper. A voice answers. My voice, but wrong somehow. Hollow. "I am you," it says. "From the end of the loop." "What loop?" My voice shakes. "You'll understand. Soon. You always do." The next morning, I convince myself it was just a dream. The mind plays tricks when it's starving, but the footprints are still there in the dust. On day 30, I find a calendar in my backpack. It's filled with notes in my handwriting, but I've never seen it before. The dates go back years and forward years, all the same days, all describing the same 40-day fast. Each entry is slightly different. In some, I see strange creatures in the forest. In others, I talk to my future self. In one disturbing entry, I've written, Day 30, I am becoming the Wendigo. I am the hunger that never ends. I drop the calendar like it's burning my hands. This can't be real. That afternoon, as I sit by the stream gathering water, I see my reflection. For a split second, my face isn't human. It's something stretched and wrong, with 2 wide eyes and a mouth full of needle teeth. I fall back, splashing in the cold. Water. When I look again, it's just me, thin, weak, afraid. That night, I have a revelation that shakes me to my core. I realize I've done this fast before, not one like it, this exact fast, in this exact cabin, and I'll do it again. I'm caught in some kind of loop in time. Each time I live through these 40 days, something changes. Each time I become a little less human, a little more something else. In a moment of clarity, I grab my journal and write frantically. I'm trapped in a circle of time. Each loop, I become more like the Wendigo, the hunger spirit from native legends. I feed on my past self to continue existing. My future self feeds on me. We're all the same person, just at different points in the loop. As I write these words, I feel someone watching me through the window. I look up slowly. It's me, but not me as I am now. This version of me is skeletal, with skin stretched tight over bones. His eyes are sunken dark pools. His fingers are too long, ending in points rather than nails. He smiles at me, and his mouth is full of fangs. "Soon," he says, and his voice sounds like dry leaves blowing across the forest floor. I scramble away from the window, heart pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. I understand now. I'm not just documenting hunger, I'm becoming hunger itself. Day 33, I barely sleep now. I'm too afraid of what might happen if I close my eyes. My body has become something I hardly recognize. My ribs press against my skin like they're trying to break free. My clothes hang off me like they belong to someone much larger. When I walk, my joints crack and pop. But the physical changes aren't what scare me, it's what's happening to my mind. I keep finding evidence that I'm not alone in this cabin, even though I know no one else is here. Or rather, no one else but other versions of me. Yesterday I found bite marks on my arm, small, precise circles that looked like someone or something took a taste while I slept. They don't hurt. They don't even bleed. It's like they're marks from a different time, already healed before they were made. I've started leaving notes for myself around the cabin. Warnings, reminders. You are Gabriel Thornfield. You are human. I tape them to the walls, the mirror, the door. But each morning, I find them changed, words crossed out, new messages written in my handwriting. You are becoming, you are hunger. The other me, the future me, is getting bolder. He no longer hides in the shadows or only appears in my dreams. I'll turn around and he'll be standing in the corner of the cabin watching me with those empty eyes. When I blink, he's gone. Last night, I heard him whispering outside my window as I huddled under my blankets. Time isn't a straight line, he said. It's a circle, a mouth, always eating itself. I covered my ears, but his voice seemed to come from inside my own head. Each time you go through the loop, you forget. Each time you think it's the first time. But I remember. I remember all the loops. I've tried to leave the forest. Twice now, I've packed my few belongings and started walking toward the road. But both times I got confused. The trees all looked the same. The path kept bringing me back to the cabin. The second time, I walked for what felt like hours, only to find myself right back where I started. The Wendigo version of me was sitting on my porch, smiling his terrible smile. You can't leave, he said. None of us can. On day 35, I made a desperate attempt to break the cycle. I gathered all my journals, all the strange photos, all the evidence of the loop, and tried to burn them in the fireplace. Maybe if I destroyed the record, I could destroy the pattern. The papers wouldn't catch fire. They remained untouched by the flames, not even scorching. That night, the Wendigo me sat at the foot of my bed while I pretended to sleep. I could feel his weight on the mattress, hear his raspy breathing. Soon you'll understand, he whispered. Soon you'll be me, and I'll be the one who came before. The circle never breaks. I kept my eyes closed tight until morning, too terrified to look. Today is day 37. I've made a terrible discovery while searching through my supplies. For anything that might help me escape this nightmare, I found an old photo album I don't remember packing. Inside were dozens of photos of me in this same cabin during this same fast. But the dates on the photos ranged from 1959 to 1999. 20 years into the future. 20 years into the past. I've been doing this for 40 years, living the same 40 days over and over. In some photos I look younger, in some older. In the most disturbing photos, from the later dates, I barely look human at all. I dropped the album when I heard scratching at the door. Slow, deliberate scratches, like someone dragging their nails down the wood. When I opened the door, there was no one there. Just a dead rabbit laid out on the porch, its body twisted into an unnatural shape. I buried it in the soft earth behind the cabin, whispering an apology, though I don't know why. I didn't kill that rabbit. At least, I don't think I did. Later, I found mud on my hands that I couldn't explain, and the taste of something copper-like in my mouth. I'm starting to lose track of which Gabriel I am. Am I the past one still becoming, the future one already transformed, or somewhere in between? Time doesn't seem to work right anymore. I'll look at my watch and see the hands spinning backward. The sun rises and sets at impossible speeds. Sometimes I feel like I'm moving through thick syrup, every gesture taking minutes to complete. Other times, I blink and hours have vanished. My hunger has changed too. I'm not hungry for food anymore. I'm hungry for something else, something I can't name. Last night I felt myself changing. I was lying in bed when pain shot through my fingers. I watched in horror as they seemed to stretch, the bones elongating, the nails hardening into points. I screamed, and the sound that came out wasn't human. But when I looked again, my hands were normal, just thinner than before, just weaker. You're losing your mind, I tell myself. This is starvation psychosis. But then I see him standing in the corner, this future version of myself, this Wendigo me with his 2 long limbs and 2 wide smile. And I know with terrible certainty that I'm not losing my mind. I'm losing my humanity. And the worst part, a small growing part of me is beginning to welcome it. Day 39, the end is near, but I'm no longer sure what the end means. Is it the end of my fast? The end of this loop? The end of Gabriel Thornfield? Maybe all 3. I've given up trying to escape. The forest won't let me leave. Time won't let me leave. I'm caught in this circle like a fly in amber. Last night, something extraordinary happened. I was sitting at my table writing in my journal when I felt a strange shift in the air, a heaviness like before a storm. I looked up and saw not 1, but 3 versions of myself in the cabin with me. To my left stood a younger Gabriel. His face was fuller, his eyes brighter. He looked confused and afraid. This was me from a previous loop, just beginning to understand what was happening. To my right stood the Wendigo version I've come to fear. Skeletal, inhuman, hungry. His black eyes watched me with cold intelligence. This was me from a future loop, fully transformed, and directly across from me sat another Gabriel, exactly as I am now, thin, weak, caught between human and monster. He nodded at me, and I realized with a shock that I was seeing myself from a parallel loop. "We're all here," the Wendigo me said, his voice like dry twigs snapping. "All versions, all loops. The circle is complete." The younger me began to cry. "I don't want this," he sobbed. "I just wanted to create art, to understand suffering." "And now you do," said the parallel me, his voice exactly like mine. "We understand. It perfectly. We've become it." I felt a strange calm wash over me. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid. All the pieces finally fit together in my mind. "We're feeding on each other," I said slowly, "across time, each version consuming the one before." The Wendigo me smiled his terrible smile. "Yes, I feed on your humanity, and you feed on his." He pointed to the younger Gabriel. "The circle never ends." "But it could," I said, surprising myself. "Someone could break the loop." All 3 versions stared at me. I felt power in their attention, like I'd said something important, something new. "How?" asked the parallel me. I stood, up slowly, my legs shaking with weakness, by accepting both sides, by becoming both human and Wendigo willingly, by choosing transformation instead of fighting it. The Wendigo me hissed, suddenly angry. "No, the fear is necessary, the struggle is necessary. For you," I said, "because that's how you feed, on fear and pain." I walked toward the younger, me who backed away in terror. "Don't be afraid," I told him gently. "You're me, and I'm you. We're all the same person caught in different moments." I reached out and touched his face. His skin was warm, real. As my fingers touched him, something strange happened. He began to fade, becoming transparent, then disappearing entirely. I felt his experiences, his memories, flowing into me. The Wendigo me screamed, a sound like winter wind through dead branches. He lunged at me, but his movements were slow, as if he were moving through deep water. I turned to face him. "I understand now," I said. "You're not my future. You're just one possible future, and I don't choose you." I reached out and touched him too. His skin was ice cold and rough like tree bark. He fought, trying to pull away, but my hand held firm. The Wendigo me began to change. His long limbs shortened. His stretched face became more human. His black eyes filled with color. He looked at me with an expression of surprise, then relief, then peace, and then he too faded away. Only the parallel me remained. We stood facing each other like mirror images. "What happens now?" he asked. "I don't know," I answered truthfully, "but I think we're free." He smiled, and for the first time in weeks it was a human smile. Then he too faded, merging with me, becoming part of me. I was alone in the cabin once more, but different, changed. I felt whole in a way I never had before. I'd accepted all parts of myself, the human and the monster, the past and the future, the hunger and the compassion. I walked to the cabin door and opened it. Outside, the forest looked different, brighter. The trees seemed to welcome me rather than trap me. I knew then that I could leave if I wanted to. The loop was broken. But first I had one more thing to do. I returned to my table and opened my journal to a blank page. I began to write my story, our story, the tale of Gabriel Thornfield and his final performance. As I wrote, I realized that my experience would live on beyond me, that others would read these words someday and feel a shadow of what I felt, that my consciousness would continue through them. "To whoever finds this journal," I wrote at the end, "know that suffering can be transformed, that monsters and humans aren't so different, that time isn't what we think it is. And most importantly, know that even in the darkest loop, there is always a way out." I finished writing as the first light of dawn broke through my window. Day 40, the end of my fast, the end of the loop. I packed my few belongings and my journals. I was ready to leave the forest, to return to the world. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in a long time, I was curious to find out. As I stepped outside, I felt lighter. The hunger that had defined me for so long was still there, but transformed. No longer a devouring emptiness, but a space for new possibilities. I looked back at the cabin one last time. For a moment, I thought I saw a figure watching me from the window, tall and thin, with two long limbs. But when I blinked, there was nothing there, just my reflection in the glass. I smiled at myself and turned away. The path through the forest was clear now, leading me forward. The circle was broken, and I was free. My name is Ezra Mapwright. I'm 52 years old, and I make maps of places that don't exist. At least that's what everyone tells me. My fingers trace invisible rivers across the paper, mapping places that exist only in the spaces between certainty and dream. I've spent the last 20 years creating these maps, detailed drawings of towns, roads, and landmarks that people remember but can't find on any official map. I wasn't always like this. I used to be Professor Mapwright, teaching geography at the university. I had a normal life, a beautiful wife named Elena, and a small hometown called Hiddencroft, where we planned to retire someday. My students respected me, and my colleagues found my lectures on cartographic history boring but acceptable. Then everything changed. Eleanor and I went to visit my parents in Hiddencroft during spring break. There was an accident, a storm, a fallen tree, our car sliding off the road into the swamp water. I made it out. Eleanor didn't. When I recovered in the hospital and tried to arrange her funeral in Hiddencroft, the real nightmare began. No one could find any record of the town, not on maps, not in county records, not anywhere. The police officers looked at me with pity when I insisted it existed. "Sir, there is no town called Hiddencroft in this county or any neighboring one," they told me. I showed them my driver's license with my birthplace clearly printed, Hiddencroft, Virginia. They shook their heads. The next day, when I checked my license again, it said Richmond, Virginia instead. I went back to the university, desperate to prove I wasn't losing my mind. I pulled out old maps from the geography department's archives. Hiddencroft was gone from all of them. I asked colleagues who had visited us there. They frowned and said they'd never heard of such a place. Ezra, my department chair, said gently, "I think you need some time off. The trauma of losing Eleanor." But I knew what I knew. I began to search for other places that had vanished from official records. I interviewed elderly people who remembered towns, crossroads, and landmarks that no longer appeared on any map. I found hundreds of them, places erased by progress, by racism, by poverty, or by something stranger. The university asked me to take a leave of absence when I started teaching my students about these phantom geographies. When I refused to stop, they took away my tenure. Eventually, they asked me not to come back at all. Now I live in a small cabin at the edge of the Great Dismal Swamp. The locals think I'm crazy, but they're kind enough. They bring me food sometimes and tell me stories about places they remember that aren't there anymore. I map everything they tell me with careful precision. Every night I talk to Eleanor while I work on my maps. I tell her about my day, about the new phantom places I've discovered. Sometimes, when the light is just right and the swamp mist curls around my cabin, I swear I can hear her answering. "Keep mapping, Ezra," her voice seems to whisper. "I'm still here, in the spaces between." Yesterday, something strange happened. A young woman knocked on my door, lost and confused. She was looking for her grandmother's house, a place called Miller's Crossing. I knew it well. I had mapped it last autumn, though it hasn't existed on any official map since 1952. I showed her my map and her eyes filled with tears. "That's it," she whispered. "That's exactly how I remember it from when I was little." I gave her the map, and this morning she returned. Somehow, impossibly, she had found her grandmother's house exactly where my map showed it should be. She brought me a jar of homemade jam as thanks. The jam sits on my table now as I prepare to start a new map. I'm getting closer to finding Hiddencroft, I can feel it. Maybe I'm not crazy after all. Maybe the world is forgetting places that still exist, and my maps are the only things keeping them from disappearing completely. Or maybe, just maybe, my maps are creating something new altogether. My mapping starts early each morning. I wake up before the sun, when the swamp is still dark and quiet, except for the occasional splash of something moving in the water. I make a cup of coffee in my old tin pot and sit at my wooden table by the window. This is the best time to think about places that don't exist anymore. I have a system for making my maps. First, I collect stories. I ride my old bicycle to the nearby towns and talk to anyone who will listen. Mostly it's the old folks who have time for me. They sit on their porches in rocking chairs, and I ask them about places they remember from when they were young. "Tell me about the places that aren't on maps anymore," I say. Mr. Jenkins, who must be nearly 90, told me about a whole neighborhood called Willow Creek that was torn down in the 1960s to build a highway that never came. Mrs. Abernathy remembered. A church that stood in the middle of what's now just empty fields. The strange thing is, when I check old county records, these places don't show up at all. It's like they never existed. But I believe these people. Their eyes light up when they describe these vanished places. They remember details no one could. Makeup, the crack in the third step of the church, the smell of bread from the bakery at Willow Creek every Tuesday morning. After collecting stories, I spread my paper out on the table. I use special paper that I order from an art supply store in Richmond. It's thick and creamy colored, not bright white like computer paper. I use pencils first, drawing very lightly. I close my eyes and try to feel the place I'm mapping. I imagine walking down its streets, turning corners, seeing buildings rise, up around me. As I draw, I talk to Eleanor. "The general store would have been here, right?" I ask, marking a spot on the paper, "and the road curves this way, following the old creek bed." Sometimes I swear I feel her hand guiding mine, helping me place things in just the right spots. It might sound crazy, but it feels real to me. Once I have the basic layout, I switch to ink. I use different pens for different features. Thin, Ones for property lines, thicker ones for main roads. I add little details that make the map come alive. A tiny church with a steeple, trees along a riverbank, even small houses where important families lived. The strangest part comes next. I take my maps outside and bury them overnight in the swamp soil. I know how that sounds, but there's something about the damp earth of the great dismal swamp that changes the maps. When I dig them up the next morning, the ink has spread just a tiny bit, making the lines look old and worn, like a map that's been used for years. The paper takes on a special feel too, almost like skin, alive and warm to the touch. Last week, something unusual happened. I buried a map of a place called Thornfield that used to be deep in the swamp, according to old Mr. Peterson. When I dug it up the next morning, there were new marks on it that I hadn't drawn, a small X near what I had labelled as the old mill, and a thin line like a path leading from it to the river. The ink was the same as mine, but I know I didn't draw those marks. People have started coming to my cabin now. Word has spread that I can help find places that aren't on regular maps. A man named Thomas came looking for the cemetery where his great-grandparents were buried. The county had no record of it, but his family had been visiting it for generations. Until suddenly, about 10 years ago, no one could find it anymore. I drew him a map based on his descriptions, and 3 days later he returned with tears in his eyes, holding a photograph of his great-grandparents' headstones. "How did you know exactly where it was?" he asked me. "I followed your map and walked straight to it, like it had been there all along, waiting." I didn't have an answer for him. I'm not sure myself how my maps work, only that they do. Yesterday, I started mapping Hiddencroft again. It's my 5th attempt. Each version gets closer, I think, but something is still missing. I can remember the main street, the small post office, the park where Eleanor and I used to have picnics, but other parts remain foggy, just out of reach. As I was working on it last night, the candle on my table flickered, even though there was no breeze. The shadows on the wall seemed to move in strange ways, forming shapes like buildings and trees. When I looked back at my map, I noticed a smudge in the corner that looked almost like words. I leaned closer, squinting in the dim light. It said, "Keep going, I'm waiting for you." The handwriting looked just like Eleanor's. Something strange is happening with my maps. At first, I thought it was just luck or good memory that helped people find these forgotten places. Now I'm not so sure. Last Tuesday, I finished mapping a small settlement called Fisher's Landing that used to be on the eastern edge of the swamp. According to Mrs. Wilson, whose grandfather ran the general store there, it was washed away in a flood back in 1934. No one had been able to find any trace of it since. After burying the map overnight in the swamp soil like I always do, I pinned it to my wall alongside my other completed maps. I didn't think much more about it until Sheriff Daniels knocked on my door 3 days later. "Ezra," he said, looking uncomfortable in his tan uniform, "I need to ask you about something odd." He explained that 2 teenagers who had been canoeing in the swamp claimed they found an old town with broken-down wooden buildings. They'd taken photos on their phones. The sheriff showed me the pictures, and my hands started to shake. It was Fisher's Landing, exactly as I had drawn it on my map, right down to the crooked chimney on the general store and the small dock extending into what used to be the river. "The thing is," Sheriff Daniels said, scratching his head, "I've lived here my whole life and patrolled every inch of that swamp. There's never been any buildings there, at least not in my lifetime." I didn't know what to say. I showed him my map of Fisher's Landing, and his face went pale. "Where exactly did you say those kids found this place?" I asked. The sheriff pointed to the spot on my map. "Right here, exactly where you've drawn it." After he left, I took my bicycle and rode out to where Fisher's Landing should be. The path was muddy and got narrower as I went deeper into the swamp. Cypress trees rose up around me, their knees poking through the black water like bony fingers. Birds went quiet as I passed. It felt like the whole swamp was holding its breath, watching me. I almost missed it. The buildings blended in with the trees and shadows, their wood weathered to the same grey-brown as the cypress bark. But then I saw the store with its crooked chimney, the sagging dock, the remnants of houses scattered among the trees. Fisher's Landing, standing right where I had mapped it, though everything was old and broken, as if it had been abandoned for decades. But that wasn't possible. This place shouldn't exist at all. I walked through the empty buildings, my footsteps echoing on rotten floorboards. Inside the general store, dust covered everything. But on the counter, I found an old ledger book. I opened it with shaking hands. The last entry was dated April 18th, 1934, the day before the flood that supposedly destroyed the town. As I was about to leave, something caught my eye. On the wall behind the counter, someone had pinned a map. It was faded and yellowed with age, but I recognized it instantly. It was my map of Fisher's Landing, the exact one I had drawn just days ago. That's not possible, I told myself. I left my map pinned to my cabin wall. I hurried home pedaling so fast my lungs burned. When I burst through my cabin door and looked at my wall, the map of Fisher's Landing was still there, pinned exactly where I had left it. But now there was a difference. The map showed footprints drawn in a rusty brown color, following the exact path I had taken through the town. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my table staring at my maps, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was I going crazy? Or were my maps somehow creating these places, pulling them back into existence from memory and paper? The next morning, I found 3 more people waiting outside my cabin. Each had a story about finding a place that shouldn't exist, places I had mapped. A woman named Clara had found her childhood home that had been torn down 20 years ago. An old man discovered the schoolhouse where he'd learned to read, though it had burned down in the 1970s. A teenage boy stumbled upon an abandoned amusement park that the county had no record of ever existing. All of them had the same question: how did you make these places come back? I didn't have an answer for them, but that afternoon, as I worked on my latest attempt to map Hiddencroft, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Parts of the map were filling themselves in. Roads I couldn't quite remember were appearing on the paper as if drawn by an invisible hand. Buildings took shape in empty spaces where my memory failed. And in the center of town, where Eleanor and I had lived in a small blue house, a tiny figure appeared, the shape of a woman standing in a doorway, waiting. That night, the dreams started. I found myself walking through Hiddencroft, but everything was wrong. The buildings twisted in impossible ways, roads led back to themselves, and Eleanor was always just ahead of me, turning a corner, entering a building, never quite where I could reach her. "The map is changing," she would call back to me. "You're changing it, Ezra, and it's changing you too." I woke up sweating, my heart pounding. On my bedside table was my half-finished map of Hiddencroft. In the dim moonlight filtering through my window, I could have sworn I saw the lines moving, shifting like something alive. The next day, I got a call from Sheriff Daniels on my old rotary phone. "Ezra," he said, his voice tight, "I need you to come look at something." He picked me up in his patrol car and drove me to the county records office. The clerk, a nervous woman named Ms. Patel, led us to a back room filled with old maps and surveys of the county. "Show him," the sheriff said to her. She pulled out a large county map dated 1987, the year Eleanor died. She pointed to a spot near the northern edge of the Great Dismal Swamp. "This wasn't here before," she said. "I've worked with these maps for 15 years. I know every town, every road, every landmark in this county." I leaned closer. There, printed in clear black ink on a map that should have been unchanged for decades, was Hiddencroft, and just below the town name, in tiny letters that I had to squint to read, "Come find me, Ezra." The sheriff drove me home in silence. What could either of us say? We had just seen the impossible, a town appearing on an old map, a town that everyone insisted had never existed, along with a message, meant only for me. That night, I spread all my maps out on the floor of my cabin: Fisher's Landing, Willow Creek, the old church in the fields, Miller's Crossing, and my many attempts at mapping Hiddencroft. I lit candles around them and sat in the center, trying to understand what was happening. "Eleanor," I whispered into the quiet room. "What's going on? Are you really there?" No. Candle flames flickered all at once, though there was no breeze. The shadows they cast seemed to move across my maps, changing them subtly. I watched, frozen, as a new road appeared on my Willow Creek map, connecting it to where Fisher's Landing should be. On another map, the church in the fields now had a cemetery behind it that I hadn't drawn. And on my newest map of Hiddencroft, the small figure of a woman in a doorway was now standing in the street, as if she had taken a step forward. I must have fallen asleep there on the floor, because I woke up at dawn with my face pressed against the Hiddencroft map. When I sat up, I noticed all my maps had changed overnight. They were now connected, showing one vast area rather than separate places. Roads that hadn't existed now linked all these phantom places together, creating a network of vanished towns and landmarks throughout the great dismal swamp. At the center of it all was Hiddencroft, larger and more detailed than before. I knew then what I had to do. I packed my backpack with water, food, my compass, and a flashlight. I pinned the new connected map to my wall and copied the most important parts onto a smaller version I could carry. Then I set out on my bicycle toward where Hiddencroft should be. The day was hot and sticky, typical for the swamp in summer. Mosquitoes buzzed around my head as I followed narrow paths deeper into the wilderness. According to my map, I would reach Fisher's Landing first, then follow a newly appeared road north toward Hiddencroft. Fisher's Landing looked different in daylight. The broken buildings seemed more solid somehow, less like ruins and more like places people had just stepped away from for a moment. Inside the general store, I found the ledger book again, but now there were new entries after the flood date. Impossible entries dated all the way up to yesterday. As I left Fisher's Landing, I noticed something odd about the sky. Dark clouds were gathering directly over the path I needed to take, while the rest of the sky remained clear blue. It was as if the swamp itself was trying to block my way. I pressed on anyway, following my map. The path led me to places I'd mapped but never actually seen before. The church in the fields, now with its cemetery visible behind it. A small crossroads community called Tanner's Junction, an old lighthouse that made no sense this far inland. At each place, I found the same thing. My maps pinned to walls inside buildings, showing the exact route I was taking. And at each place, the maps showed the woman figure from Hiddencroft one step closer to the edge of town, as if she was slowly making her way toward me as I made my way toward her. By mid-afternoon, the sky had turned an unnatural greenish black directly above me. The air felt heavy, like just before a massive storm. Birds had gone silent, and even the insects seemed to have disappeared. The only sound was the squelch of my bicycle tires on the muddy path and my own breathing. I reached a fork in the path, not marked on my map. Both ways looked identical, narrow trails disappearing into thick cypress trees. I hesitated, then felt a strange tugging sensation, as if someone had tied a string around my heart and was gently pulling me toward the left path. I followed it. The path grew narrower until I couldn't ride any longer. I hid my bicycle in some bushes and continued on foot. The trees seemed to lean in toward me as I walked, their branches reaching down like arms. More than once I had to duck to avoid them touching me. "The landscape is fighting back," I whispered, remembering my dream. "It doesn't want to be mapped." Around sunset, I reached a clearing and stopped dead in my tracks. Ahead of me stood a wooden sign, weathered and tilting slightly to one side. It read, "Welcome to Hiddencroft." Beyond the sign was my hometown, exactly as I remembered it. The main street with its row of shops, the small park with its gazebo, the church steeple rising above the trees. But everything was wrong somehow. The buildings looked stretched, as if someone had pulled them slightly too tall. The colors were faded, like an old photograph left in the sun. And there were no people. Not a single soul moved on the streets or in the windows of the houses. I walked slowly. Into town, my footsteps echoing loudly on the empty street. Everything was exactly where it should be. The post office, the diner where Eleanor and I used to have breakfast every Sunday, the library where she worked, but all empty, all silent. As I approached our small blue house at the end of Maple Street, I saw that the front door was open. A chill ran down my spine despite the summer heat. "Eleanor!" I called out, my voice sounding small in the empty town. No answer came, but when I looked down, I saw wet footprints on the porch steps leading into the house. They were small, woman-sized. I followed them inside. Our furniture was there, arranged exactly as I remembered. Eleanor's books on the shelves, her favorite quilt on the sofa, even her coffee mug on the kitchen counter with lipstick still on the rim. The footprints led to our bedroom. The door was closed. I reached for the knob with a trembling hand, but before I could turn it, I heard a sound behind me. I spun around. There on our dining table was a map. My latest map of Hiddencroft. But now it showed the entire town in perfect detail, including a tiny figure of a man standing exactly where I was, in our house. As I watched, horrified, the map began to change. The edges of the town started to blur and fade, as if being erased by an invisible hand. Buildings on the outskirts disappeared one by one. The map was unmaking Hiddencroft even as I stood in it. I ran to the window and looked out. Sure enough, the houses across the street were becoming transparent, fading like ghosts until they vanished completely. The edge of town was disappearing, and the erasure was moving inward, toward our house. I turned back to the map in panic. Now half the town was gone, and words were appearing across the blank spaces. "You can't map what doesn't want to be found, Ezra." A terrible understanding dawned on me. I wasn't bringing Hiddencroft back. I was finishing its destruction. My maps weren't preserving these places. They were allowing them to finally completely vanish. And somewhere in this vanishing house, Eleanor was waiting for me. The floor beneath my feet began to feel less solid. When I looked down, I could see through it to the earth below, as if the house was becoming as transparent as the rest of the town. "Eleanor!" I shouted, running back to the bedroom door. "Where are you?" This time a voice answered from behind the door. Her voice, just as I remembered it. "I'm here, Ezra. I've always been here. But you need to stop mapping now. Let it go." "I can't," I cried, jiggling the doorknob that now seemed stuck. "I've spent years trying to find you, and now you're erasing me completely," her voice said sadly. "Every map you make takes more of me away. Don't you understand? Some places aren't meant to be found. Some places need to stay lost." I leaned my forehead against the door, tears streaming down my face. Outside, the erasure had reached our front yard. Soon, it would take our house and Eleanor with it. "What do I do?" I whispered. "Burn the maps, Ezra," she said. "All of them. It's the only way to stop this." As she spoke, the bedroom door began to fade beneath my hand, becoming transparent like everything else. "But I'll lose you again," I said. Her voice was fading too. "You never really found me, Ezra. You found something else. Something that's using your maps to enter your world. Something that's been pretending to be me." The door disappeared completely. Instead of our bedroom, I found myself staring into a darkness deeper than night, a void that seemed to go on forever. And in that darkness, something moved. something huge and ancient that had been waiting for someone like me, someone who could map the spaces between worlds and create doorways where none should exist. It wasn't Eleanor. It had never been Eleanor. I ran. I ran from the house as walls faded around me. The street outside was mostly gone now, just patches of pavement floating in emptiness. I could see the swamp through the vanishing town, trees and water appearing as Hiddencroft disappeared. My only thought was to get back to my cabin and burn the maps. All of them, before whatever was coming through could fully enter our world. I ran blindly, not even checking my map. The town dissolved behind me, and suddenly I was splashing through swamp water, pushing past cypress trees. The sky above had turned completely black, though it couldn't be later than early evening. No stars shone, no moon, just darkness. I heard it following me, something huge moving through the swamp. Trees cracked and fell, water splashed. A sound like breathing, but not human breathing, more like the sound an entire forest might make if it could draw breath. "Ezra," called a voice that still sounded like Eleanor, but with something else underneath, something ancient and hungry. "You can't outrun what you've already invited in." I kept running. My lungs burned. Branches scratched my face. I fell, got up, fell again. But somehow I found the path. Somehow my feet knew the way even in darkness. I passed landmarks I had mapped, the church now half transparent, Tanner's Junction now just a few ghostly buildings, Fisher's Landing, barely visible in the growing dark. Each place was fading, being erased from reality just as Hiddencroft had been. "You're only making it stronger," Eleanor's voice called, closer now. "Every step you take across your mapped land feeds it." I didn't stop. I couldn't. My cabin was my only hope. Night had fully fallen by the time I stumbled into my clearing. My cabin looked wrong. The walls bulged outward as if something inside was pushing to get out. Light poured from the windows, not the warm yellow of my oil lamps, but a sickly green glow. I burst through the door. All my maps were on the wall where I'd left them, but they were changing. The paper rippled like water. The ink ran and reformed into new shapes, showing not towns and roads anymore, but something like a giant web connecting all the places I'd mapped, with a dark shape at the center, a shape that was growing larger by the second. I grabbed my matches with shaking hands and struck one. The flame looked tiny and weak against the green glow filling my cabin. "Eleanor," I called out, "if any part of you is really here, I'm sorry." I touched the match to the corner of the nearest map. It caught fire immediately, burning with an unnatural brightness. I moved quickly, lighting map after map until my wall was a sheet of flame. The cabin filled with smoke and a horrible shrieking sound, like paper tearing but 1,000 times louder. The maps curled and blackened. As they burned, I saw images in the flames. All the places I'd mapped being consumed, returning to the nothing they had become before I tried to bring them back. "Stop!" The voice wasn't Eleanor's anymore. It was deep and vast, shaking the very walls of my cabin. "You don't know what you're destroying." "I know exactly what I'm destroying," I said, watching as the last map, my final version of Hiddencroft, caught fire. Something that should have stayed lost. The shrieking grew louder. The green light flared so bright I had to shield my eyes. Through my fingers, I saw something. Forming in the center of my cabin, a tear in the air itself, a hole opening between my world and somewhere else. Through it, I caught glimpses of a vast darkness filled with shadowy landscapes, phantom geographies that had never existed in our world. And reaching through that tear was something enormous, not quite a hand, not quite a branch, but something that could grab and pull and drag me through. The maps were almost completely burned now. The tear was shrinking. The thing, reaching through, became desperate, lashing out. My table splintered. Books flew from shelves. The cabin walls groaned. One tendril of shadow wrapped around my ankle, pulling me toward the tear. I fell, scrambling to grab onto something, anything. My hand closed around Eleanor's locket, which I kept on my bedside table. The metal burned hot in my palm. "Let him go," said a voice. Eleanor's real voice, not the thing's imitation. It seemed to come from the locket itself. The shadow around my ankle loosened for just a second, long enough for me to kick free. I crawled away as the last map crumbled to ash, and the tear snapped shut with a sound like thunder. Silence fell. The green light vanished, leaving only the orange glow of the burning wall. I scrambled to my feet and ran outside, watching as flames engulfed my cabin. Everything I had worked on for 20 years burned away. I stood there until dawn, making sure nothing survived. As the sun rose, I saw Sheriff Daniel's patrol car bouncing down the dirt road toward me. He got out, eyes wide at the smoking ruins of my cabin. "Ezra! What happened? Are you all right?" I must have looked terrible. Clothes torn, face scratched, eyes wild. "I'm fine," I said, surprised to find it was true. "There was a fire, my maps—" "Your maps?" He looked confused. "What maps?" I stared at him. "My maps of the vanished places. Fisher's Landing, Willow Creek, Hidden Croft." He frowned. "I don't know what you're talking about, Ezra. Are you sure you're okay?" A chill ran through me. "Sheriff, yesterday you showed me Hidden Croft appearing on an old county map. You drove me to the records office." He shook his head slowly. "I haven't seen you in weeks, Ezra, and I've never heard of any Hidden Croft. Look, let me take you to the hospital. You might have breathed in too much smoke." I let him lead me to his car, too tired to argue. As we drove away, I looked back at the ruins of my cabin. For just a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing there, a woman in a blue dress watching us leave. I spent 3 days in the hospital. The doctors found nothing wrong with me physically, but recommended a psychiatric evaluation. When I told them about my maps and the vanished places, they exchanged worried glances and wrote things in their charts. No one remembered the places I'd mapped. Not Fisher's Landing, not the church in the fields, not Tanner's Junction. And certainly not Hidden Croft. The county had no record of any of them. The teenagers who found Fisher's Landing now remembered only getting lost in the swamp. Thomas couldn't recall finding his great-grandparents' cemetery. It was as if burning the maps had erased not just the places themselves, but even the memory that they had ever existed, all except for me. I remembered. After they released me from the hospital, I moved to a small apartment in town. I got a job at the local library, shelving books and helping visitors find information. I stopped talking about vanished places. I stopped drawing maps. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the stacks, surrounded by books, I feel a familiar presence. Sometimes I find small treasures hidden between pages. A pressed flower from our garden in Hidden Croft, a movie ticket stub from our last date, a note in Eleanor's handwriting. "Some places need to stay lost," the latest note read, "but that doesn't mean they're gone forever. I'm still here in the spaces between. And one day, when the time is right, you'll find your way back to me, the real me." I keep her locket with me always now. On quiet nights, I swear I can feel it pulse warmly, like a tiny heartbeat. I haven't drawn a map in over a year, but lately my fingers have been itching to hold a pen again, not to map vanished places this time, but to chart. A different kind of geography. The spaces between worlds, the thin places where reality bends. I think I understand now what my maps were really doing. They weren't bringing lost places back. They were creating doorways between here and somewhere else, somewhere the lost things go when they vanish from our world. Eleanor is there, I'm certain of it now. The real Eleanor, not the thing that pretended to be her. And someday I'll find a way to map a path to her that doesn't tear open the walls between worlds. Until then, I wait. I remember. And I listen for her voice in the spaces between certainty and dream. Sometimes, on foggy mornings when the world seems thin, I walk to the edge of the great dismal swamp and look out over the water. The mist curls and shifts, forming shapes like buildings and streets. like a town waiting to be remembered. I'll find you, I whisper, not by mapping, but by remembering. The right way this time. And from somewhere in the mist, I swear I hear her answer. I know you will, Ezra. I know you will. My name is Isadora Silence. Yes, I know what you're thinking. My last name seems too perfect for what I do. Sometimes I wonder if names shape our destinies. I turned 44 last week, celebrating alone in my small cabin on the edge of Minnesota's Boundary Waters. No cake, no candles, just the soft tapping of pine branches against my window and the distant call of a loon across the lake. That was music enough for me. People used to call me a musical genius. By 16, I had compositions, performed by orchestras in New York, London, and Berlin. Critics said I heard things in sound that others couldn't. Maybe they were right, but that was before the accident, before the semi-truck crossed the center line on that rainy highway and took Robert from me. Robert, my partner in both music and life. The crash stole him completely and took half my hearing, my right ear now silent as his grave. The doctors called it a miracle that I survived. I called it a curse. What good is half hearing for someone who lives for sound? After months of recovery, I realized something strange. The partial deafness had opened a door. With my damaged hearing, I began noticing the spaces between sounds, the pauses, the silences. They weren't empty at all. They were full of something I couldn't quite name. That's when I left my position conducting the Minneapolis Symphony. My colleagues thought I was having a breakdown. Take a sabbatical, they said. Come back when you're ready. But I wasn't breaking down. I was breaking through. I sold my condo, packed only what would fit in my old Subaru, and drove north until the radio stations faded to static. I found this cabin, miles from the nearest neighbor, where the loudest human sound is the occasional distant plane passing overhead. Here, I've been developing a new kind of music, compositions that exist in the spaces between notes. Music that uses silence as its primary instrument. I brought a trunk full of blank sheet music and dozens of recording devices. Each morning, I wake before dawn and walk into the forest to listen, not to the birds or wind or water, but to what lies underneath them, the heartbeat of the wilderness itself. My old friends in the music world think I've lost my mind. The few letters I receive ask when I'm coming back to real music. They don't understand that I've never been more serious about my art. Yesterday, as the sun was setting, I sat by the lake and felt my heartbeat slow until it matched some rhythm in the forest around me. For just a moment, everything aligned. My pulse, the lapping waves, the distant call of an owl, and something else, something listening. That's when I knew I was getting close to what I came here to find, the unheard symphony that plays beneath everything. And I think it's been waiting for someone to listen. Today, I begin my masterwork. I'm calling it the Symphony of Screaming Silence. And I have a feeling it's going to change everything. It's been 3 weeks since I started working on my new symphony. Every morning, I wake up before the sun and walk deeper into the forest than the day before. I bring only my notebook, a small recorder, and the hearing aid I rarely use in the city. Out here, it picks up things most people miss. The soft crunch of pine needles settling, the hushed breathing of sleeping animals, the gentle stretch of tree roots reaching through soil. Yesterday, something strange happened. I found a clearing, about 2 miles from my cabin, a perfect circle of open ground surrounded by tall pines. The moment I stepped into it, all the forest sounds just stopped. Not gradually, like animals going quiet when they sense danger. This was different. Like someone had pressed a mute button on the whole world. I stood there, my heart pounding. In my chest, I could feel its beat but couldn't hear it. Even the sound of my breathing vanished. For the first time since the accident, my good ear matched my deaf one. Complete silence. Most people would have been scared. Maybe I should have been too, but instead, I sat down in the middle of that circle and opened my notebook. "This is it," I whispered. though no sound came out. This is what I've been looking for. I stayed in that spot until sunset, trying to capture what I was experiencing. How do you write music for absolute nothing? It's like trying to paint with invisible colors. When I finally stood to leave, my legs stiff and cold, the sounds rushed back all at once, like someone turning the volume up on the world. It was so sudden and loud that I stumbled and nearly fell. Back at the cabin, I played my recordings from the clearing. The first few minutes captured the normal forest sounds, then nothing. Not the muffled quiet of a bad recording, but perfect emptiness. The kind that makes your ears strain to find something, anything to hold on to. I stayed up all night writing, my pencil moving across the music paper in patterns I'd never tried before. I created new symbols for the silences I'd felt, not just rest between notes, but different types of emptiness, each with its own weight and texture. This morning, I tried playing what I'd written on my old flute. The notes came out wrong, not because I played them incorrectly, but because they seemed to bend around something unseen in the air of my cabin. When I reached the section marked "Absolute Clearing," my flute made no sound at all, though I could feel the air moving through it. I've gone back to the clearing every day this week. Each time, the circle of silence seems a little wider, the quiet a little deeper. Yesterday, I could swear I felt it breathing. Last night, I dreamed I was conducting an orchestra, but instead of musicians, the chairs were filled with trees, rocks, and shadows. They played perfectly, following every movement of my hands. When I woke up, I found mud and pine needles on my floor, though I'm certain I cleaned my boots before coming inside. Something is happening to me out here, to my music, to the very way I understand sound, and I think the forest is listening to me just as carefully as I'm listening to it. I've lost track of time. The calendar on my cabin wall says, "It's been a month since I found the silent clearing, but it feels both longer and shorter somehow. The days blend together like notes in a chord. Something is changing in the forest, or maybe something is changing in me. Probably both." Last week, I noticed that I could hear the clearing before I reached it. Not with my ears, but with something else, like how you can feel someone watching you without seeing them. The silence has a weight to it now, a presence that pulls me forward through the trees. I've filled 3 notebooks with music that doesn't look like any composition I've ever seen. The notes cluster in strange patterns, sometimes piling on top of each other, sometimes spreading across the page like stars. Between them are the symbols I created for different kinds of silence. Little empty spaces that somehow feel fuller than the notes themselves. 2 nights ago, I tried playing a section of my new symphony on my old piano. The keys moved under my fingers the way they always have, but the sounds that came out were wrong. Some notes hung in the air too long, others vanished the moment they were born. And during the parts written for the clearing, the piano made sounds I know it shouldn't be able to make, like the distant call of loons or the whisper of wind through pine needles. When I finished playing, I realized I was crying without knowing why. That same night, I woke up at exactly 3:17 a.m. I know because I checked my watch, surprised to find myself standing at the edge of the forest in my nightgown. I don't remember leaving my bed or walking outside. The moon was so bright that the trees cast sharp shadows across the ground, and in the spaces between those shadows, I could see my footprints leading into the darkness. I stood there, shivering not from cold, but from the strange certainty that I had been called. The forest wanted me. The silence was inviting me in. I almost went. My body seemed to lean forward on its own, ready to follow those footprints back to whatever had made them. But then a wolf howled somewhere far away, and the spell broke. I ran back to my cabin and locked the door. In the morning, I found pine, needles in my bed, and dirt under my fingernails. Yesterday, I brought my recorder to the clearing again. When I played back the tape, instead of silence, I heard music, faint and distant. like an orchestra playing underground. Music I recognize, but have never heard before. Music I'm certain I wrote, though I don't remember doing it. This morning I noticed something else. The birds near my cabin have started singing in patterns that match parts of my symphony. When I pour water into my cup, the splashes form rhythms from my composition. Even my heartbeat seems to follow the time signature I've been using. I'm no longer sure if I'm writing this music or if it's writing itself through me. Last night, I dreamed I was standing in the middle of a vast concert hall. Every seat was filled, but not with people, with trees and rocks and shadows and stars. They were waiting perfectly still and silent for me to begin conducting. When I lifted my hands, I saw that my fingers had grown long and branch-like, stretching up toward a ceiling that wasn't there anymore, but was, instead, the night sky. I woke up with my arms raised above me, my fingers spread wide, conducting something in my sleep. The symphony is almost complete now. I can feel it taking shape around me, inside me. One final movement remains unwritten, and I think, no, I know, the forest is waiting for me to finish it. This morning I woke up on the floor of my cabin, surrounded by pages of music I don't remember writing. My fingers were stained with ink and dirt and something else, a greenish tinge that won't wash off no matter how hard I scrub. I'm changing. There's no point in denying it anymore. Yesterday, I stood in front of my small bathroom mirror and barely recognized myself. My hair has grown wild, with small twigs and leaves caught in it that I don't remember picking up. My eyes look different too, the pupils wider, the color deeper, like the dark water of the lake on a moonless night. But the strangest thing is what's happening to my hearing. The dead ear, the one damaged. In the accident, it's not dead anymore, but it doesn't hear normal sounds. Instead, it picks up something else. Something that exists underneath or between regular noises. When the wind blows through the trees, my right ear hears words in it. When rain falls on my roof, it sounds like hundreds of tiny instruments playing together. 3 days ago, I tried calling my old friend Sarah from the music conservatory. I needed to hear a human voice, to remember that there's a world beyond these woods. But when she answered and started talking, my brain couldn't make sense of her words. They sounded wrong, too fast, too sharp, too human. I hung up after less than a minute, my hands shaking. The silent clearing has grown. What started as a small circle is now nearly the size of a football field. The trees around it stand like audience members waiting for a performance to begin. Sometimes I think I see them leaning forward slightly, as if in anticipation. Last night, I took my violin to the clearing. I haven't played it since before the accident. It was always Robert's favorite when we performed together. As I tuned the strings, I felt something shift in the air around me. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was attentive, listening. I began to play the first movement of my symphony. The notes came easily, flowing from memory I didn't know I had. But as I played, I realized I wasn't moving the bow across the strings anymore. My arm was still, yet the music continued. The violin was playing itself, or something was playing through it, through me. I should have been terrified, but instead, I felt a strange peace settle over me. This was right. This was what I had come here to find. When the music finally stopped, I looked down and saw that vines had grown up around my feet, anchoring me to the forest floor. Thin, green tendrils had wrapped themselves around my wrists and the neck of my violin, binding us together. It took nearly an hour to carefully untangle myself. On my way back to the cabin, I got lost. Me, who has walked these woods every day for months. The trees seemed to shift around me, opening paths and then closing them. I wandered in circles until I finally realized what was happening. The forest wasn't trying to trap me, it was guiding me. When I stopped fighting and simply followed where it led, I found myself at the edge of the lake, standing before a sight that took my breath away. The entire surface of the water was perfectly still, reflecting the full moon and stars like a giant mirror. And in that reflection, I could see music, actual notes and measures glowing silver blue against the black water. My symphony written across the sky and water in light. I ran back to my cabin and spent the entire night composing the final movement. My pencil moved so fast it tore through pages. When dawn came, I had it. The complete symphony of screaming. Silence. Today, as I'm writing this, I notice that the trees outside my window have arranged themselves differently. They've moved closer to the cabin, forming a semicircle like an amphitheater. They're waiting for the performance, and I think I'm finally ready to give it to them. Tonight, when the moon rises, I will return to the clearing with all my instruments. I will play my symphony from beginning to end for the first time. I'm not afraid anymore of what might happen when I do. I understand now that this music was never really mine. I didn't compose it, I discovered it. It's always been here, playing in the spaces between sounds, waiting for someone who could hear it, someone like me, with one foot in the world of human music and one in something else entirely. My hands look different as I write this. The green tinge has spread, and my fingers seem longer, more branch-like. When I press them to my chest, I can feel my heartbeat matching the rhythm of the wind outside. The final transformation is beginning, and I welcome it. The moon is full tonight. I'm writing this by its light, which seems brighter than it should be, bright enough to cast shadows inside my cabin. My handwriting looks different. The letters flow into each other like water, like music. I've gathered all my instruments at the edge of the clearing. My violin, flute, a small hand drum, and some bells. But I know now that these aren't what will make the real music happen. They're just tools, like the first training wheels on a child's bike. The true instruments will be the trees, the air, the ground beneath my feet, and me. An hour ago, I made a recording for whoever finds this journal. I spoke into my old tape recorder, explaining what I've discovered here in the Boundary Waters, about the music that exists in silence, about how all the sounds in the world are just variations of one great symphony that's been playing since before humans existed. I'm not sure if my voice on the tape will even be understandable anymore. It doesn't sound human, even to me. I've packed this journal, the recording, and all my written music into a waterproof box. I'll leave it at the edge of the forest before I go to the clearing for the final performance. If you're reading this, you've found what I left behind. All that will remain of Isadora Silence, the woman who once conducted orchestras in the grandest concert halls in the world. The trees are moving outside my window, not swaying in the wind. There is no wind tonight. They're walking, slowly, deliberately, their roots pulling free from the ground with wet, sucking sounds. They're gathering for the performance. My audience is arriving. It's almost time. As I write these words, I can feel the symphony thrumming through me. My pulse, my breathing, even my thoughts are following its rhythm. The final movement is building inside me like a wave about to break. I am both terrified and completely at peace. I'm at the clearing now. The moon hangs directly overhead, turning everything silver blue. The trees have formed a perfect circle around me, their branches reaching toward the center like hands. The ground beneath me feels alive, humming with anticipation. I've set up my instruments, but I already know I won't need them. The forest has provided everything necessary. The clearing itself is the instrument, and I am merely the bow that will draw music from it. As I stand in the center, I can feel eyes watching from between the trees. Not human eyes, not animal eyes either. Something else. The audience has gathered, spirits of this place, ancient and patient. They've been waiting for this concert for a very long time. I raise my hands and the clearing responds. The silence deepens, thickens, until it has texture I can almost touch. I begin to conduct. At first, nothing seems to happen. Then I notice it, a faint vibration in the air, like the lowest string of a bass being plucked miles away. It grows, rising up through the soles of my feet, into my legs, my spine, my chest, my throat, until my whole body is humming with it. I move my hands in patterns I've never used before, drawing sounds from the nothing around me. The silence splits into layers, each with its own tone and weight. Deep rumbling notes emerge from the ground. High crystalline sounds drift down from the stars. Between them, 1,000 variations of stillness sing their parts. The trees join in, their branches swaying in rhythm, their leaves rustling in perfect harmony. The lake beyond the clearing adds its voice, not the sound of water, but the sound of what water remembers. The rocks sing of time. The air itself becomes a chorus of all the words never spoken. And me? I am conducting, yes, but also being conducted. My body moves in ways I don't control. My good ear and my once dead ear are now perfectly matched, both hearing the unhearable. The boundary between Isadora and the symphony is dissolving. I can feel myself spreading outward. My consciousness extends past my skin, flowing into the trees, the ground, the air. I am everywhere and nowhere. I am the music and the musician. The symphony reaches its climax, a moment of perfect balance between sound and silence, between being and non-being. Everything stops. Not just the music, but time itself seems to pause. In that frozen moment, I understand everything. The meaning of the symphony, the purpose of my journey here, why the forest chose me. Sound and silence are not opposites. They are the same thing viewed from different angles. Music isn't what we add to the world, it's what we help the world remember about itself. The moment passes. Time begins again. The final movement crashes. Through me like a wave, like a storm, like birth and death happening at once. My body arches backward, arms spread wide. I am no longer conducting. I am being played. And then, as suddenly as it began, it's over. I collapse to my knees in the center of the clearing. Around me, the trees have returned to their places, roots diving back into the earth. The watching eyes between them have closed, satisfied. The audience is departing. But something is different. I am different. I try to stand, but my feet won't move. I look down and see that my legs have sunk into the earth, not buried, transformed. My feet have become roots, spreading outward beneath the soil. My arms, when I lift them, are branching at the ends, fingers elongating into twigs. I should be panicking, but I'm not. This feels right, inevitable. The final note in the symphony. As the transformation spreads upward through my body, I feel no pain, only a gentle stretching. My skin hardens into bark. My hair becomes leaves, rustling in a breeze I can feel inside and out. My heart slows, matching the ancient pulse of the forest around me. My last human thought is that I've finally found what I came here for, the perfect union of artist and art. I am becoming my masterpiece, and as consciousness fades into something wider, deeper, and infinitely more patient, I realize that the symphony of screaming silence will continue playing long after these words end, through me, through the forest, through anyone who comes here and truly listens. Can you hear it? It's playing right now in the space between your heartbeats. In the pause between your breaths. Listen, my name is Marcus Whitehorse, though folks who know of me call me Shepherd. Not that many people know me these days. I prefer it that way. 47 years on this earth, and I've found more peace in the Montana wilderness than I ever did. Among my own kind. The morning sun breaks through the pines as I make my rounds. My cabin sits in a clearing surrounded by what some might call a junkyard of cages and pens, but what I call home. Home not just for me, but for all the broken things that find their way here. Good morning, Jackson, I whisper to the three-legged wolf who watches me with golden eyes. I named him after a medic I knew in Korea. Both of them had the same steady gaze, like they could see right through you to the pain hiding underneath. I slide a rabbit I trapped yesterday into his pen. He doesn't pounce like a wild wolf would. Instead, he waits until I back away, a courtesy we've worked out over the months he's been with me. My hands move with the memory of what they once were, a veterinarian's hands, trained to heal. The government gave me that education in exchange for service. They didn't tell me I'd end up putting down more creatures than I saved. Some human, some not. All suffering. The license they took away when I came home doesn't matter out here. The animals don't care about papers hanging on walls. Let's check that bandage, Eleanor, I say, approaching the blind hawk's perch. She tilts her head, finding me with her ears rather than her missing eyes. Shot out by some hunter who left her to die. I sing softly as I work, an old Blackfoot healing song my grandmother taught me. My voice cracks on the high notes. Too many cigarettes, too many years of swallowing grief. The bear cub, I call him Thomas, stirs in his shelter as I approach. His back legs don't work right. Mountain lion got him but didn't finish the job. He drags himself forward on powerful front paws, looking more curious than afraid as I set down a bowl of mashed berries and fish. Easy day today, I tell him, my fingers gently checking where his fur is growing back over scars. No exercises, just rest. My patients are the ones nobody wants. The maimed, the sick, the abandoned. Like calls to like, I suppose. Sometimes I go without dinner so they can eat. Winter's the hardest. I sleep outside some nights when a new arrival needs the warmth of the cabin more than I do. I'm a big man, 6'4" of muscle and bone. But around these creatures I move like I'm made of feathers. You learn that quick or you don't last in this work. A startled, injured animal is dangerous to itself as much as to you. By midday, I've tended to 17 different creatures. Some will heal enough to return to the wild. Others will stay until their last breath. I keep a graveyard behind the cabin, small markers carved with the names I gave them. Not their real names, of course. No creature tells you its real name. But names of people I knew, people who deserve to be remembered. Sometimes hikers get lost in these parts. I help when I can, point them back to trails, maybe offer a meal. But I never invite them to stay, never show them my full operation. They wouldn't understand what happens here. Might even report me to authorities who'd shut me down, take away the only purpose I have left. Because the truth is, I'm afraid of what I might do if I lived among people again. There's something in me that doesn't fit right with the world of men. Something that understands suffering too deeply to walk away from it. The animals don't mind this strangeness in me. If anything, they seem drawn to it. As the sun begins to set, I sit on my porch steps and look out at my misfit family. My hands, weathered and scarred, rest on my knees. These hands have held more gentleness than the morning mist holds dew. Each finger a covenant with creatures who've forgotten kindness. This is my life now. These broken beings and me, healing each other one day at a time. It's enough. It has to be. What I don't tell them, what I can't explain, is that something is changing. In me, in them, in the very air between us. Something I don't have words for yet. But I will soon. The thing about animals that most folks don't understand is they know when you're trying to help. They might fight at first. Fear makes all creatures lash out. But there comes a moment when something passes between you. A trust. An understanding. I've always had this gift, I guess you could call it. Even as a boy on the reservation, wild things would calm under my touch. My grandmother said I had old spirits walking with me. The elders watched me with careful eyes, like they were waiting for something to happen, something important. Today I'm working with Sadie, a mountain lion with a badly infected paw. She growls low in her throat as I approach her cage. I know, girl, I know it hurts, I say, keeping my voice steady, but we need to clean it again. Most men would sedate a predator like this before treatment. I don't. The chemicals mess with their heads, make recovery harder. Instead, I sit outside her cage and start talking. Just talking. about nothing special. The weather, the deer I saw this morning, the ache in my left knee that tells me rain is coming. After 15 minutes, Sadie stops growling. After 30, she lays her head on her paws, eyes half closed, but watching me. That's when I open the cage and slide in. One wrong move and she could tear my throat out. But I don't make wrong moves. Not with them. Good girl, I whisper as I touch her head. My fingers find that spot behind her ears, and a rumble, not quite a purr, mountain lions don't purr, vibrates through her body. When I reach for her, injured paw, she lets me take it. The infection is bad. Angry red streaks climb up her leg. I clean it carefully, feeling each flinch run through her powerful body. As I work, I sing. The same healing songs I've sung 1,000 times before. Songs older than this country. Songs that carry pain away. When I finish, Sadie does something strange. She licks my hand. Not a taste test before biting. A gesture of gratitude. It's hard to explain how I know the difference, but I do. As I leave her cage, a memory flashes through my mind, running through tall grass, the hot scent of prey in my nostrils, powerful muscles bunching as I prepare to leap. I stumble, catching myself on a tree. That wasn't my memory. Couldn't be. It felt like I was Sadie, hunting, living in her skin. Must be tiredness. I haven't slept well lately. Too many dreams. Back at my cabin, I boil water for coffee and stare out the window at the darkening forest. Sometimes I think about the life I left behind. The hospital tents in Korea, the screams that wouldn't stop, human and animal cries blending until I couldn't. Tell the difference. They sent me home with medals I threw in a river and nightmares I couldn't shake. I tried working at a regular vet clinic in Billings, but the walls closed in tighter each day. Then came that terrible night, the farmer's dog with cancer eating it from the inside out. The pain so bad the poor creature couldn't stop howling. The farmer crying, saying he couldn't afford treatment, but couldn't bear to put his friend down himself. I did what needed doing. I always have. But the clinic owner didn't see it that way. Said I should have tried to sell more treatments, even knowing they wouldn't work. Said I was too quick to give up, so I left. Drove until the roads ran out, then walked until I found this place. Started with one injured fox, then 2, then more. Word spread somehow among the creatures of the forest. They started coming to me, or leading me to their injured kin. My coffee grows cold as darkness falls. I should sleep, but instead, I walk to my hospital, a converted shed with a wood stove and basic supplies. Thomas the bear cub is sleeping, his breath coming. In small huffs, I check on him, then each of the others. At the back of the shed, in a special cage lined with soft blankets, lies my newest patient, a young wolf, barely more than a pup, caught in a trap that nearly took her leg. I haven't named her yet. Haven't found the right name that fits. I sit beside her cage and gently stroke her fur through the bars. Her eyes open, blue, unusual, and for a wolf, and watch me without fear. What should I call you? I ask softly. As our eyes meet, something cold slides down my spine. For just a second, I swear, I see my own face reflected in those blue eyes. Not as I am now, but as something different, something changing. The wolf whines softly and pushes her muzzle against my hand. Marie, I whisper, though I don't know why that name comes to me. I'll call you Marie. That night, I dream of running through snow on 4 legs, howling at a moon that calls me by name. A name that isn't Marcus, a name that has no human sounds at all. I wake up sweating even though the cabin is cold. Something is happening to me, something I don't understand. And I'm starting to think my animals know more about it than I do. The headache started 3 days ago, not the normal kind that come from too little sleep or too much sun. These feel different, like something pushing from inside my skull, trying to make more room. I'm chopping wood when the first bad one hits. The axe slips from my hands as pain shoots behind my eyes. I drop to my knees, pressing my palms against my temples. That's when I see it, a forest clearing I've never visited. I'm looking down, at a stream, but the perspective is all wrong. Too low to the ground, my reflection shows a fox's face, not my own. The vision vanishes as quickly as it came, leaving me gasping in the dirt. One of my ravens, a bird with a healed broken wing who never left, lands nearby, watching me with two knowing eyes. Just tired, I tell him, though I know it's a lie. The raven tilts his head and, for a second, I hear words in the sound he makes. Not English, not Blackfoot, something older. I shake it off and get back to work. Animals need feeding, wounds need cleaning. No time for whatever strangeness is happening in my head. By evening, I can't ignore it anymore. While changing Thomas's bandages, I suddenly taste berries in my mouth, sweet and tangy, though I haven't eaten any. I feel the weight of a body not my own, the drag of useless back legs. I pull away from the bear cub, my hands shaking. "What's happening to me, Thomas?" I whisper. The cub looks at me with dark eyes that seem too wise, too aware. He makes a soft sound in his throat, and I understand it as clearly as if he'd spoken English. "You're finally seeing." I back away, nearly tripping over my own feet. That's not possible. But even as I deny it, more sensations flood in. The sharp scent markers left by wolves at the edge of my property, the taste of rabbit blood, the feeling of wind through feathers I don't have. That night, I don't sleep. Can't sleep. Memories that aren't mine play behind my closed eyelids. A hawk soaring over mountain ridges, a wolf tracking scent through underbrush. A bear cub following its mother before the gunshot that took her away. I know these are their memories, my animals, their lives before they came to me. But how am I seeing them, feeling them? It's not possible. At dawn, I splash cold water on my face and stare at my reflection in the cracked mirror above my sink. My eyes look different. The brown has flecks of gold now, like Jackson's eyes, like a wolf's. "Get it together, Marcus," I mutter to myself. "You're just tired, overworked." But when I step outside to start my morning rounds, every animal is watching me. Not with their usual expectation of food or care, but with something else. Recognition, awareness, like they're seeing me for the first time. Marie, the wolf pup, howls from her cage. The sound hits me like a physical blow, and suddenly I'm in two places at once, standing in my yard and also running through moonlit woods with a pack at my heels. I drop to my knees, overwhelmed by the double vision. When it passes, I find myself surrounded. My animals have gathered close. Those that can move have come near, and those in cages are pressed against the bars, watching. "What do you want?" "From me?" I ask, my voice breaking. Jackson, the three-legged wolf, approaches slowly. Despite his injury, he moves with dignity, purpose. He stops just inches from me, his golden eyes locked on mine. Then he does something no wild wolf would ever do. He lowers his head, exposing his neck in submission. One by one, the others do the same, the predators bowing their heads, the prey animals growing still and quiet. Even the birds stop their morning calls. A terrible understanding begins to dawn on me. This isn't just about me hearing them or seeing their memories. Something is happening between us, something that has never happened to a human before. I reach out with trembling fingers and touch Jackson's head. The moment contact is made, I feel it, a current of something flowing between us. Not electricity, not heat, something else, something alive, and with it comes knowledge. These animals didn't just randomly find their way to me. They were sent, chosen, to prepare me. For what? I whisper, though I'm no longer sure if I'm speaking aloud or just thinking. Jackson raises his head, and I swear I see something ancient and knowing behind his animal eyes. The answer comes not in words, but in feelings, images, sensations, hunger, change, becoming. I pull my hand back as if burned. No, I say firmly, whatever this is, I don't want it. But even as I deny it, I feel the truth settling into my bones. This isn't something I can refuse. It started long before I knew what was happening. Maybe the day I first healed an injured creature. Maybe before I was born. I stand up shakily and look around at my sanctuary. It doesn't feel like mine anymore. It feels like a halfway place, a cocoon. As I turn to go back inside, a sharp pain cuts through my skull. I catch a glimpse of my shadow on the ground, stretched long in the morning sun. For just a moment it doesn't match my body. It's taller, thinner, with strange proportions. Long limbs and what looks like antlers rising from the head. Then it's gone, just my normal shadow again. But the fear remains, cold and heavy in my stomach. Something is happening to me, something I can't stop, and the animals are waiting for it. I haven't slept in 3 days. Not really. I close my eyes and immediately I'm somewhere else. Flying over treetops, digging in earth with claws, swimming in cold mountain streams. I live 100 different lives in the darkness behind my eyelids. My body is changing too. I notice it this morning as I wash my face. My fingers look longer, the joints more pronounced. The veins in my arms stand out blue against too pale skin. I've lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. Just stress, I tell my reflection, but the eyes looking back at me don't seem convinced. They're changing color again, more gold now than brown, with an unusual shine in the dim light. I try to eat breakfast but can't stomach it. Everything tastes wrong, too dead, too processed. I find myself staring at the tree line, thinking about fresh meat, still warm with life. The thought makes me sick and hungry at the same time. My routine with the animals keeps me grounded. I clean cages, change bandages, prepare food, but even these familiar tasks feel different now. I know without checking which animals need more water. I sense pain before I see the signs of it. When I reach for supplies, my hand often grabs exactly what I need before I consciously decide what that is. It's like part of me is always one step ahead of my thoughts. Today, I'm treating Eleanor, the blind hawk. As I check her healing wings, she makes a soft, chirping sound. Without thinking, I answer with a similar noise from my own throat, a TT sound no human should be able to make. We both freeze. Eleanor tilts her head, her sightless face turned toward me. That didn't happen, I whisper, more to myself than to her. But it did happen, and it happens again when I check on Jackson. He growls low about pain in his bad leg, and I respond with a whine that perfectly mimics his own language. We have an entire conversation without words, about pain, about healing, about the changing seasons. By afternoon, I'm terrified of what's happening, but also strangely calm. Like two different people are living in my skin. The man who fears this impossible thing and something else that welcomes it. I decide to hike up to the ridge overlooking my property. Maybe distance will clear my head. As I walk, I notice everything with painful sharpness. The scent of a fox that passed this way hours ago, the sound of field mice moving under fallen leaves, the taste of coming rain in the air. At the top of the ridge, I look down at my little sanctuary. From up here, it looks so small, just a cabin and some handmade pens in a clearing. Hard to believe it's the center of whatever strange thing is happening to me. The pain hits suddenly, worse than before. It starts in my spine and radiates outward, like my bones are trying to rearrange themselves. I fall to my knees, then flat on my stomach, face pressed against cold earth. Please, I gasp, though I don't know who I'm talking to. Please make it stop. But it doesn't stop. Instead, the ground beneath me seems to disappear as my mind splinters into fragments. I'm no longer just Marcus. I'm also a falcon diving through air, wings tucked tight against my body. A fox, teeth closing around the neck of a rabbit. A bear, honey sweet on my tongue and bees stinging my muzzle. A wolf, blood of my first kill. Hot in my mouth, a deer, running from the scent of predators. Dozens of lives, hundreds of memories, thousands of sensations, all crashing through me at once. I scream, but the sound that comes out is not human. It echoes across the valley, a noise of pain and transformation that belongs to no single species. When I come back to myself, the sun is setting. I've been lying here for hours. My clothes are soaked with sweat, despite the cool air. Every muscle aches like I've run 100 miles. I push myself up slowly. My body feels wrong, like it doesn't fit me anymore. My limbs are too long, joints bending in ways they shouldn't. When I try to stand, I topple forward, catching myself on hands that look more like claws. I stare at them in the fading light. My fingers have elongated, the nails thickened and curved. The skin is stretched tight over pronounced knuckles. They don't look human anymore. Fear surges through me, followed by a wave of hunger so intense. It doubles me over, not normal hunger, something deeper, primal, a need to consume that goes beyond food. I stumble down the path toward my cabin, moving awkwardly on legs that feel new and strange. Night is falling fast, and with it comes a strange clarity. I can see in the darkness as if it were day. Every sound is crystal clear. The beating, wings of an owl taking flight half a mile away, the scurrying of night creatures waking to hunt. When I reach my property, all the animals are agitated. The wolves pace their enclosures, the birds flutter nervously. Even Thomas, usually so calm, stands on his front paws, making distressed noises. They sense the change in me. They've been waiting for it, preparing me for it. I stagger to my cabin and lock the door, though I know now that no lock can keep out what's happening. It's already inside me, has been for longer than I realized. In the small bathroom, I force myself to look in the mirror. The face that stares back is still recognizable as mine, but altered, cheekbones more pronounced, jaw longer, eyes almost completely gold now, with vertical pupils like a cat's. What am I becoming? Whisper. As if in answer, a name rises from the deepest part of me. A name I've heard whispered on the reservation when elders told scary stories to keep children in line. A name no one speaks aloud. Wendigo, the monster that was once human, the creature of endless hunger, the spirit that possesses those who commit the ultimate taboo. But that can't be right. I've never done the thing the legends warn against. I've never consumed human flesh. I've spent my life healing, not destroying. Unless... A terrible thought occurs to me. What if it's not about literal hunger? What if the stories got it wrong? What if the hunger that transforms is something else entirely? My knees give out and I slide to the floor, back against the cold wall. Outside, I hear Marie begin to howl. The sound travels through me like electricity, awakening something that wants to answer. I clamp my changed hands over my mouth, fighting the urge to let out a howl of my own. But I can't fight what's inside me. Not anymore. The sound that tears. From my throat is neither human nor wolf. It's something in between. A cry that carries all the loneliness and pain I've kept locked inside for years. As the sound dies away, I feel a strange peace settle over me. Whatever is happening, fighting it only makes the pain worse. I need to understand it, need to follow this transformation to its end, even if that end is becoming something no longer human. I wake to sunlight streaming through my cabin window. For a moment, everything feels normal, just another day of work ahead. Then I try to move, and reality comes crashing back. My body has changed even more overnight. I'm taller now. Had to curl my legs up just to fit in my bed. My skin is pale, almost translucent, stretched tight over a frame that's too thin to be healthy, but somehow stronger than before. And the hunger, it gnaws at me like a living thing, demanding to be fed. I force myself to stand, ducking to avoid hitting, my head on the low ceiling. My movements are different, smoother in some ways, jerkier in others, like I'm learning to use new muscles. In the kitchen, I try to eat eggs, bread, anything. But my stomach turns at the sight of human food. What I crave can't be found. In my pantry, a soft scratching at my door draws my attention. When I open it, I find Jackson sitting there, his golden eyes fixed on mine. Without a sound, he turns and limps toward the forest edge, looking back once to make sure I'm following. I should feel strange about this. A wolf leading me like I'm the animal. But nothing feels strange anymore. I follow him into the trees, moving quietly on feet that barely seem to touch the ground. We walk for nearly an hour, deeper into the wilderness than I usually go. Finally, Jackson stops at a small clearing where a deer lies dead, freshly killed, its throat torn, out cleanly. My first thought is that Jackson killed it, but that's impossible. With his 3 legs, he couldn't bring down a healthy deer. Besides, the kill is too neat, too precise. Jackson looks at me, then at the deer, and I understand. This is for me, food for the hunger that's consuming me. Who did this? I ask, my voice rough from disuse. A sound behind me makes me turn. There, at the edge of the clearing, stands a creature I've never seen before. Tall and thin, with limbs too long for its body. Antlers rise from its head like a crown of bones. Its skin is the color of winter sky, pulled tight over visible bones. It should be terrifying. I should be running. But instead I feel a strange recognition, like looking in a mirror and seeing what I'll become. You're like me, I say softly. The creature inclines its head slightly. When it speaks, the voice seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I was like you, a healer, a caretaker. Now I am Wendigo. Why are you here? To guide, to witness. It gestures to the deer with long clawed fingers. To provide. I look at the dead animal, and the hunger roars inside me. I don't understand what's happening to me. You are becoming, the Wendigo says simply, as I became, as all like us must. Becoming what? A monster? The creature makes a sound that might be laughter. Is that what you think I am? A monster? Before I can answer, it moves, faster than anything should be able to move, to stand beside the deer. With one swift movement, it tears open the animal's chest, exposing the still warm heart. Eat, it says, then you will understand. Every human instinct tells me to run, but the hunger is stronger than any instinct now. I kneel beside the deer, and with hands that look less human by the hour, I take what is offered. The moment the meat touches my lips, something changes inside me. Not just the satisfaction of hunger, but a flood of memories, the deer's entire life pouring into me. I feel its first steps, its mother's protection, the joy of running through summer fields, the terror of being hunted. Every moment of its existence becomes part of me. When it's over, I sit back, blood on my hands and tears on my face. I felt its life, I whisper. Yes, the Wendigo nods. Now you begin to understand. This is our gift and our curse. What? Gift? What curse? To consume is to know is to carry. We are memory keepers, Marcus Whitehorse. We hold the consciousness of everything we touch. I look down at my blood-stained hands. That's why I've been seeing their memories, my animals. Yes, each time you healed them, you took something of their pain into yourself. Their consciousness, merged with yours, bit by bit. The creature moves closer, its movement like branches swaying in wind. Humans can only carry their own consciousness. It is a small, lonely thing. But we carry multitudes. I don't want this, I say, but even as the words leave my mouth, I know they're not entirely true. Part of me, a growing part, is fascinated by what's happening. None of us wanted it, the Wendigo says, but once it begins, there is no turning back. only forward into what you will become. And what is that exactly? The creature's expression shifts subtly, something like sadness in its inhuman face, something both more and less than human, a vessel for collective consciousness, a keeper of lives that would otherwise be forgotten. It steps back, antlers silhouetted against the morning sky. I have been watching you for years, Marcus, waiting. You were chosen because your capacity for compassion exceeds your fear, because you already understood on some level that individual identity is an illusion. Chosen by who? By the forest, by the balance that must be maintained. The Wendigo gestures around us. Every ecosystem needs its predators and its prey, but it also needs its witnesses, those who remember, those who carry the story forward. A distant howl echoes through the trees. Marie calling from my sanctuary. The sound pulls at something deep inside me. Your charges need you, the Wendigo says. Go to them, continue your work. I will return when you are ready for the next stage. And if I fight this, if I refuse to change? For the first time, the creature's expression becomes truly frightening, not with malice, but with pity. Then you will go mad, torn between worlds. The memories you've already absorbed will consume you from within. There is no going back to what you were, Marcus. There is only forward, or destruction. With that, it turns and walks into the trees, its form seeming to waver and dissolve, until I can't tell if it's gone or simply become one with the forest. I make my way back to my sanctuary, moving faster than should be possible through the dense woods. My mind races with what I've learned, with the deer's memories still fresh inside me. When I reach the clearing, all my animals are waiting. They watch me with knowing eyes as I approach, blood still on my clothes, my transformation more visible with each passing hour. Marie howls again, and this time I don't fight the urge to answer. The sound that comes from my throat is neither human nor wolf. It's something new, something becoming. As the sound echoes across the valley, I realize I'm no longer afraid. Whatever I'm changing into, it started long ago, with the first animal I ever healed, with the first pain I ever took away. I look at my hands, longer now, fingers tipped with beginnings of claws, and know that I've been walking this path my entire life. The only question is where it leads. Days blur together now. I no longer sleep like humans do. Instead, I drift between different minds, different bodies. While my physical form rests in the cabin, my consciousness roams through the forest, seeing through the eyes of creatures both wild and under my care. I am the owl swooping silently through night air. I am the mouse freezing in terror at a shadow. Overhead, I am the old bear lumbering toward hibernation. I am the young fox learning to hunt. I am all of them. And somehow, still Marcus. My body continues to change. I'm nearly 7 feet tall now, my frame stretched and thin but impossibly strong. My skin has a grayish cast, and there's a constant ache at my temples where something is trying to grow. I avoid mirrors. What I see there doesn't make sense to my human mind. Better to focus on the work that still grounds me, caring for my animals. Except they're not just my animals anymore. They're parts of me, extensions of a consciousness that keeps expanding. This morning, I'm changing Thomas's bandages when something new happens. As I touch his fur, I don't just sense his thoughts or memories. I feel myself becoming him. My consciousness sliding completely into his body while my own sits motionless, hands frozen in midair. I look up at my human form through Thomas's eyes. It's disturbing. Seeing myself from the outside, my body looks wrong, caught between human and something else. My eyes are open but empty, staring at nothing. Panic rises in me, Thomas's heart beating faster, his bear instincts not understanding what's happening. Calm, comes a voice, Jackson watching from nearby. Let it happen. I try to respond, but bare throats can't form human words. Instead, I make a soft huffing sound. Your consciousness is learning to move freely, Jackson explains, though not in words exactly. It's more like pure meaning flowing between us. This is good. Progress. How do I get back? I ask, my fear rising as my human body continues to sit there, unmoving. Want it, Jackson says simply. Your body is an anchor. It calls to you. I focus on my human form, on the feeling of being in that body. With a sudden lurch, I'm back, gasping, shaking, but myself again. Thomas looks at me with knowing eyes. He experienced it too, my consciousness briefly sharing space with his. I'm sorry, I tell him, my voice shaking. Thomas makes a soft sound that somehow conveys complete acceptance. He doesn't mind the sharing. None of them do. They've been expecting it. That night the Wendigo returns. I sense its presence before I see it, a cold awareness touching the edges of my mind. I go outside to meet it. The moon is full, casting everything in silver light that my changed eyes see as clearly as day. You're progressing faster than I expected, the Wendigo says, stepping from the tree line. Is that good or bad? Neither. It simply is. The creature moves closer, studying me with ancient eyes. You've experienced the sharing. It's not a question, but I nod anyway. With Thomas. It was intense. The first time always is. It will become easier, more natural. Nothing about this feels natural, I say, though that's not entirely true anymore. Parts of it, the expanded awareness, the connection to the animals, those are beginning to feel right in a way I can't explain. What happens next? I ask. The Wendigo is silent for a long moment, antlers gleaming in the moonlight. The collection accelerates. You will begin to absorb consciousness beyond your immediate circle. The forest will open to you. And then comes the suffering. A chill runs through me at those words. What suffering? To carry consciousness is to carry pain, the Wendigo explains. Every life contains it. The rabbit torn by the fox starving in winter, the bear cub watching its mother fall to human guns. It steps closer, and I resist the urge to back away. You have been absorbing pain in small doses through your healing work. Now you will feel it all at once. The collective suffering of every creature in your domain. Why? I ask, my voice barely a whisper. Why must that happen? Because to truly understand, you must feel. To truly heal, you must know the depth of what needs healing. The Wendigo's voice softens, if such a thing is possible. You were chosen for your capacity to endure, Marcus. Your heart has always been large enough to hold others' pain. What if it's not? What if it breaks me? Then you will not complete the transformation. You will remain caught between, neither human nor Wendigo, a half thing, driven mad by what you cannot fully become. The honesty is brutal, but somehow comforting. At least I know the stakes now. When will it happen? Soon. Days, perhaps. The Wendigo looks up at the moon. When the time comes, do not fight it. Surrender to it. Let the pain flow through you, not into you. I don't understand the difference. You will. The creature begins to move away, then pauses. One more thing, Marcus. When the suffering comes, you will not face it alone. Before I can ask what that means, the Wendigo is gone, melting into the darkness between trees. I return to my cabin, but sleep won't come. Instead, I sit on my porch watching the moon track across the sky. One by one, my animals come to join me. Those free to move gather close, while those in enclosures watch from where they are. We sit together in silence, a strange family preparing for something none of us fully understands. The next morning, it begins. I'm feeding Eleanor when the first wave hits. Not pain exactly, but an overwhelming flood of sensation. The ground seems to drop away as my consciousness expands outward like ripples in a pond. Suddenly, I'm connected to everything in a 5-mile radius. Every bird, every squirrel, every insect. Their lives flash through me in fragments too fast to process. I fall to my knees, dropping the food I was holding. Eleanor makes a concerned sound and hops closer. "It's starting," I gasp. The connections keep expanding. 10 miles, 20, the entire forest becoming a network with me at its center. And with connection comes awareness of every moment of suffering happening right now. A deer giving birth to a stillborn fawn. A wolf with a broken paw, slowly starving. A rabbit caught in a trap, fear turning its heart. A bear cub lost, calling for a mother who will never return. Hundreds of moments of pain all pouring into me at once. I curl into myself, hands clutching. My head, a scream building in my throat. Let it flow through, not into. I remember the Wendigo's words, but I don't know how to do that. The pain is overwhelming, drowning me. Then I feel it, warmth against my side. Jackson has pressed his body against mine. On my other side, Thomas does the same. Eleanor lands on my shoulder, her wings gently brushing my cheek. One by one, every animal that can reach me makes contact, and somehow it helps. Their presence creates channels, pathways for the pain to move through me rather than lodge within me. I'm still connected to the suffering, still feel every moment of it, but now it flows like a river instead of drowning me like a flood. Hours pass this way, me on the ground, surrounded by my animals, pain coursing through me and out again. The sun crosses the sky. Shadows lengthen. Still, the awareness grows, expanding to encompass more and more lives. As darkness falls, something shifts. The pain doesn't lessen, but something else joins it. Moments of joy, of peace, of connection. The same network that carries suffering also carries a fox family playing in morning sun, an eagle soaring on perfect thermal currents, a deer finding tender spring shoots after a hard winter, a wolf pack running together under stars. The balance of it all washes through me, life in its entirety, not just the painful parts. I begin to understand what the Wendigo meant. This isn't just about suffering, it's about witnessing, remembering, carrying the complete story of the forest and everything in it. When the moon rises, I finally manage to stand. My animals move with me, still keeping contact, still helping the energy flow. I look down at my hands, no longer anything close to human. Long grey fingers ending in points that aren't quite claws, but aren't nails either. My clothes hang loose on a frame that's stretched beyond human proportions, and I can feel something new on my head. Small protrusions pushing through skin at my temples. The beginnings of antlers. I should be terrified. Instead, I feel a strange peace settling over me. This is what I was always meant to become. A witness, a memory keeper, a guardian of consciousness that would otherwise be lost. Thank you, I whisper to my animals. They press closer, offering warmth and connection. As the night deepens, I stand tall under stars that suddenly seem so much closer than before. My transformation isn't complete. I can feel that there's still more to come, but I'm no longer fighting it. Whatever I'm becoming, it started with compassion, with healing, with love. And somehow, I know that's what will carry me through. What comes next? The forest knows me now, and I know it. I haven't been in my cabin for days. Don't need shelter anymore. Don't feel cold or heat the way I once did. My body has changed too much for human comforts to matter. The antlers have grown, a crown of bone that rises from my head, branching like winter trees against the sky. My skin is the color of mist before dawn, my fingers long enough to wrap twice around my old wrists. When I walk, my feet barely touch the ground. I'm not quite Wendigo yet. Not quite like the ancient one who visits me each night. But I'm no longer human either. I still care for my animals. still change bandages and clean wounds and bring food to those who can't hunt. But now, I do more than heal their bodies. I touch their minds, ease their fears, carry their memories so they don't face death alone. Today, Eleanor is dying. The blind hawk has grown weaker over weeks, her old injuries finally taking their toll. I sit beside her perch, one long finger gently stroking her feathers. I'm afraid, she tells me, not in words but in feelings. I understand perfectly. Don't be, I reply the same way. I'll hold your memories. You'll fly forever in me. As her breathing slows, I open my mind to hers completely. Her entire life flows into me, hatching from a blue speckled egg, first flight on summer winds, the pain of the hunter's shot that took her eyes, and every moment since. I take it all, every sensation, every emotion, tucking them safely into that expanding space inside me where all the memories live. When her heart finally stops, I don't just know she lived. In some way, she still does, her consciousness preserved within mine. I carry her small body to the graveyard behind what was once my cabin. The markers there seem like artifacts from another life. Crude wooden crosses with names carved by human hands. My hands. As I dig a small hole for Eleanor, I sense the Wendigo watching from the trees. It comes forward as I place the hawk's body in the earth. You understand now, it says, not a question. I nod. She's still here. I touch my chest. I can feel her, remember her, everything she was. This is our purpose, the Wendigo says. We are the memory keepers. When all else is forgotten, we remember. Is that why the stories call us monsters? I ask. Because we take consciousness from the dying? The ancient creature makes a sound like wind through dry leaves, its version of laughter. Humans fear what? They don't understand. They see our hunger and think we consume flesh when what we truly consume is experience, memory, life itself. I look down at Eleanor's grave. It doesn't feel like enough, just remembering. It is everything, the Wendigo says firmly. Without memory, nothing truly lives. Without witnesses, nothing has meaning. It moves closer, towering over even my changed form. You are nearly ready for the final stage. The question is, are you willing? What is the final stage? Transcendence. The complete dissolution of boundaries between your consciousness and all others. When that happens, you will no longer be Marcus, who is becoming Wendigo. You will be Wendigo, who remembers being Marcus. Fear flickers through me. The last human emotion still strong enough to register. Will I lose myself? You will find yourself, the Wendigo corrects. The self you were always meant to be. Larger than one body, one mind, one life. It reaches out one long hand, stopping just short of touching me. Tonight, when the moon rises, if you are willing. I look back at my sanctuary, the animals watching from their enclosures, the cabin where I once lived a human life, the graves of those I've helped cross over. Everything I've built, everything I've been. Will I still be able to care for them? I ask, nodding toward my charges. You will care for all things, the Wendigo says. Your compassion will expand beyond these few creatures to encompass the entire forest. You will be guardian, witness, and healer to all. I close my eyes, feeling the weight of the decision. Part of me, the last human part, wants to cling to what I was, to my name, my memories, my individual self. But a larger part understands that hanging on is just prolonging the inevitable. I've already changed too much to go back. I'm willing, I say finally, opening eyes that now see far more than human eyes ever could. The Wendigo nods once. When the moon rises, the clearing where you first ate, come alone. It turns to go, then pauses. One last gift before tonight. It gestures toward the tree line. From the shadows steps a wolf, larger than any I've seen before, with a silver-grey coat and eyes the color of sunlight through amber. I recognize her immediately, though she's changed as much as I have. Marie, I whisper. The wolf approaches, her movements graceful and sure. The trap wound that nearly took her leg has healed completely, leaving barely a scar. She will be your companion, the Wendigo says. Every Wendigo needs one. A connection to ground us when the voices of the forest grow too loud. Marie sits beside me, her warm presence a comfort against my cold skin. I rest one long hand on her head, and our minds touch, no longer separate beings, but something in between. Not quite one, not quite two. Thank you, I say to the Wendigo, but it's already gone, melted back into the forest it guards. I spend my last hours as almost human, saying goodbye to each of my animals. Not with words, but with touch, with presence, with promises to continue watching over them. Some will stay in their enclosures, too injured to survive in the wild. Others will go free when they're healed. All will remain under my protection. As the sun begins to set, I walk one last time around my sanctuary. The cabin looks small now, like a child's playhouse. I touch the rough wooden walls, remembering the man who built it, the man I was. It's time, Marie says in that wordless language we now share. Together, we walk into the forest as darkness falls. The path to the clearing seems to glow slightly, visible to my changed eyes despite the lack of light. Marie moves silently beside me, our steps in perfect rhythm. The clearing is transformed in moonlight, a perfect circle of silver grass surrounded by ancient trees that seem to lean inward, watching. The Wendigo waits at the center, taller and more ethereal than I've ever seen it. Are you prepared? It asks as I approach. Yes, I say, though my voice shakes slightly. What do I need to do? Surrender, the Wendigo says simply. Let go of what you think you are. Become what you have always been. It reaches out both hands. I hesitate only a moment before placing my changed hands in its own. The connection is immediate and overwhelming. My consciousness explodes outward, no longer contained by skin and bone. I feel myself spreading like ripples in a pond, like light from a star, touching every living thing in the forest. I'm in the trees, feeling sunlight through leaves. I'm in the stream, cold water rushing over stones. I'm in the deer, the wolf, the bear, the hawk. I'm in the soil, in the air, in the silent spaces between heartbeats. I'm everywhere and everything at once. It should be terrifying. It should break my mind. But instead, it feels like finally taking a full breath after a lifetime of shallow ones. Like remembering something I'd forgotten I knew. In the center of this expansion, there is still a core that calls itself Marcus. That remembers a human. Life, human loves, human pain. But that core is now just one memory among countless others. One story in an endless library. I open eyes that see in ways human eyes never could. The Wendigo, the other Wendigo, nods in recognition. Welcome, brother, it says. I look down at my body, fully transformed now, tall and otherworldly, antlers branching toward stars. Marie sits beside me, her form somehow larger, more wolf than wolf, my anchor to the physical world. What happens now? I ask, my voice carrying new harmonics, as if multiple throats speak together. Now you begin your true work, the elder Wendigo says. Watching, remembering, protecting. This forest is your domain now, as mine is the mountains beyond. And you? I ask. Will I see you again? When needed. Our kind are solitary by nature, but not alone, never alone. It gestures to the living network I can now feel surrounding us. Every consciousness you touch is part of you now. Every memory you hold keeps you company. The elder Wendigo steps back, beginning to fade into the darkness. There is one more thing you should know, brother. What's that? There are humans who can sense us, feel our presence. Sometimes in dreams or stories, they glimpse what we truly are. Its eyes, ancient beyond reckoning, hold mine. Some will fear you, call you monster. Others will understand, even if they don't know why. These are the ones who feel the connections between all living things. The ones who might someday become like us. With those words, it disappears completely, leaving me alone with Marie in the moonlit clearing. I close my eyes and feel the forest breathing around me. Every heartbeat, every rustling leaf, every drop of water, all part of a pattern I can now see clearly. And within that pattern, my place. Guardian, witness, memory keeper, Wendigo. I bend down to touch Marie's head, our minds flowing together with effortless connection. Let's go home, I say, though the word means something different now. Home is no longer a cabin in a clearing. Home is the entire forest, every creature within it, every memory I hold. As we walk through the night, animals emerge from hiding to watch us pass, not with fear, but with recognition. They sense what I am now, what I've always been becoming. I reach out with my expanded awareness and touch each one gently, a promise of protection, of remembrance. No life too small to matter, no death too insignificant to witness. This is my purpose now, my eternal task, to ensure that nothing that lives within my domain ever truly dies, to carry their consciousness forward when their bodies fail. The last human part of me, the part that still calls itself Marcus, wonders if the stories were right after all, if I've become something terrible, a monster that feeds on life. But as dawn approaches and I feel the joy of birds awakening, the contentment of deer finding sweet grass, the satisfaction of a fox with her cubs, I know the truth. I haven't become death. I've become its opposite. I am the shepherd of last moments, the keeper of final breaths, the guardian of consciousness that would otherwise vanish into nothing. And in that guardianship, I have found something I never had as a human. Peace. My name is Sarah Nightshade. I'm 39 years old, and I help children who are hurting inside. At least, that's what I used to do. My hands trembled like autumn leaves as I signed the final custody papers, releasing another broken child to the system's grinding teeth. Jamie was the last one I'd try to save. The social worker avoided my eyes as she collected the documents, stuffing them into a folder with mechanical efficiency. "You did your best, Dr. Nightshade," she said, but her voice carried the hollow ring of practiced sympathy. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. What could I say? That my best wasn't good enough? That I'd failed another child who needed me? The cabin door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow felt final. Through the window, I watched her car disappear down the gravel road, taking Jamie back to the world that had already hurt him so badly. I sank into my chair, surrounded by the mess of my new home. Cardboard boxes filled with case files lined the walls. My laptop sat open on the kitchen table, displaying an email from my lawyer. The subject line read, "Malpractice suit. Update. Not good." I couldn't bear to read it. Not tonight. Instead, I walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. The mirror above the sink was old, its silver backing spotted with age. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Hollow eyes, unwashed hair, the deep lines around my mouth that hadn't been there a year ago. "What happened to you?" I whispered to my reflection. 15 years of my life given to healing children others had given up on. The autistic boy who finally spoke after 6 months of therapy. The little girl rescued from an abusive home who learned to trust again. The twins who witnessed their parents' murder, coaxed back from catatonia through patience and love. And what did I have to show for it? A ruined career. A cabin in the middle of nowhere. And the crushing knowledge that no matter how many children I saved, I couldn't save the one who mattered most. My daughter, Emma. I turned away from the mirror and walked to my bedroom. On the nightstand sat her photo, forever 5 years old, forever smiling with missing front teeth. I touched the frame gently, the way I used to touch her forehead when checking for fever. "I miss you, baby," I said to the empty room. Tomorrow, I would start organizing my research on feral children, kids raised by animals or in extreme isolation. It was meant to be my great contribution to child psychology. Now it was just an escape, a way to hide from the world that had turned against me. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows of the cabin. In the bathroom, something fell with a crash. Probably just the soap dish, I thought, but when I went to check, I found the mirror had fallen, cracking down the middle in a jagged line. And for just a second, though I knew it was impossible, I could have sworn I saw not one, but 2 different versions of myself staring back from the broken glass. I didn't sleep much that night. The broken mirror kept showing up in my dreams. By morning, I decided to just get up and start unpacking. The cabin wasn't much, but it was all I could afford after spending most of my savings on legal fees. 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with a fireplace that probably hadn't been used in years. The real estate agent called it rustic. I called it all I have left. As I unpacked my books and research papers, I found myself thinking about how I got here. 15 years ago, I was fresh out of school with big dreams of helping children that nobody else could reach. I had a special way with them, a patience that other doctors lacked. Non-verbal kids would sometimes start talking to me after just a few sessions. Children who had been abused and wouldn't let anyone touch them would eventually hold my hand. "You have healing hands," my old professor once told me. But I knew it wasn't magic. It was just about really seeing them, hearing them even when they couldn't speak. Then Emma got sick, my beautiful daughter. The doctors said it was a rare genetic disease. Nothing I could have done to prevent it. Nothing I could do to save her. I took 6 months off after she died. When I came back to work, something in me had changed. I started taking on the hardest cases, children everyone else had given up on. I worked longer hours. I mortgaged my house to set up a fund for families who couldn't afford therapy. "You can't save everyone, Sarah," my colleague David warned me. "And you can't bring Emma back by saving these other kids." I knew he was right, but I couldn't stop. Every child I helped felt like a small victory against the darkness that had taken my daughter. Then came Tyler, 10 years old, severely traumatized, barely speaking. His parents were desperate, and I promised them I could help. For months, we made slow progress. Then one day, he had a breakthrough. He let me hug him for the first time. The next week, David reported me for inappropriate contact with a patient. The accusation was ridiculous, but in our field, even a whisper of impropriety is enough. My patients were transferred to other doctors. The parents who once thanked me for saving their children wouldn't return my calls. The malpractice suit followed soon after. So here I was, in a cabin in the Adirondacks, surrounded by my research on feral children, kids raised by wolves, dogs, monkeys, or locked away from human contact. I'd been collecting these cases for years, fascinated by how these children adapted, how their minds developed without normal human interaction. Now, these forgotten children were my only company. I finally finished unpacking around noon and decided to take a walk outside. The cabin was surrounded by thick forest, with a small path leading down to a lake. It was peaceful, but the silence felt heavy. When I got back, I noticed something odd. The broken mirror in the bathroom had been replaced with a new one, bigger, with an ornate silver frame that looked out of place in the simple cabin. I didn't remember ordering a replacement, Maybe the property manager had sent someone while I was out. But how would they know about the broken mirror? I stared at my reflection. For a moment, it looked like I was smiling, even though I knew I wasn't. I blinked, and the image corrected itself. Just my tired face looking back at me. "You're losing it, Sarah," I muttered to myself. But as I turned to leave, I could have sworn I saw my reflection turn a second later, as if watching me go. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with the new mirror. I kept finding reasons to walk past the bathroom, glancing in each time to check if my reflection was doing what it was supposed to do. It always was. Of course it was. Mirrors don't lie. I decided to focus on my work instead. I spread my research files across the kitchen table and opened my laptop. My current study focused on a girl found in Ukraine who had supposedly been raised by dogs until she was 8. The photographs showed a child with wild eyes who walked on all fours. As I typed my notes, a movement caught my eye. There was another mirror in the living room, hanging above the fireplace. I hadn't noticed it before. It was smaller than the bathroom one, with a wooden frame. I got up to look at it. My reflection stared back, normal as could be. "You're just tired," I said to myself, "seeing things that aren't there." I went back to work, but couldn't concentrate. I kept thinking about Emma, about how she used to love playing with mirrors, making funny faces and laughing at her reflections. Around midnight, I finally gave up on work and decided to go to bed. I stopped in the bathroom to brush my teeth, avoiding looking directly at the mirror. But as I bent to spit into the sink, something made me look up. My reflection wasn't brushing its teeth. It was standing still, arms at its sides, watching me. I dropped my toothbrush and jumped back. My heart pounded in my chest like a trapped animal. The reflection moved with me. Now it looked normal again, showing my shocked face and raised hands. "It's just your imagination," I whispered. "You're exhausted and seeing things." I backed out of the bathroom without turning around, then ran to my bedroom and shut the door. I sat on the edge of my bed, taking deep breaths to calm myself. That's when I noticed the full-length mirror on the closet door. I didn't remember seeing it earlier. I approached it slowly. The mirror showed me in my rumpled clothes, hair a mess, eyes wide with fear. But as I watched, something changed. My reflection's clothes transformed into the professional outfit I used to wear to my office. Her hair became neatly styled. Her posture straightened with confidence. She looked like me from 2 years ago, before Emma died, before the accusations. I reached out to touch the glass and she did the same. Our fingertips met on the cold surface. Then she spoke. "You could have saved them all, Sarah." I yanked my hand back as if burned. Mirrors don't talk. They can't talk. But the reflection kept going, her lips moving while mine stayed frozen in horror. "Remember Jamie and Tyler and all the others you failed." "You're not real," I managed to say. "I'm hallucinating." My reflection smiled sadly. "Look behind you." I spun around and gasped. My bedroom was filled with mirrors I'd never seen before, hanging on walls, propped against furniture, covering the windows. In each one I saw a different version of myself. In one I was crying, in another screaming silently. In a third I looked peaceful, almost happy. But the most terrifying one showed me with blood on my hands. I closed my eyes and counted to 10, certain that when I opened them, everything would be back to normal. Just my ordinary bedroom in this ordinary cabin. No mirrors, no other versions of myself watching me with accusing eyes. 1, 2, 3. When I reached 10 and opened my eyes, all the mirrors were still there. And now all the reflections were looking at each other, whispering things I couldn't hear. I backed toward the door, fumbling for the handle behind me. I needed to get out of this room, out of this cabin, maybe out of my own skin. But when I finally got the door open and stumbled into the hallway, I found myself in a place I didn't recognize. A long corridor with mirrored walls stretching as far as I could see in both directions, and in every reflection, a different. Sarah looked back at me. I stood frozen in the mirrored hallway, too scared to move forward or back. My heart was beating so fast, I thought it might burst. "This isn't real," I whispered. "I'm dreaming. I must be dreaming." But the cold floor under my bare feet felt real. The goosebumps on my arms felt real. The fear choking me felt very, very real. I forced myself to take a step forward. All the reflections moved with me, but each one was slightly different. In one mirror, I looked younger, maybe 30, and wore the blue dress I had on the day Emma was diagnosed. In another, I looked older, with grey streaks in my hair and deep lines around my eyes. I touched one of the mirrors, and the surface rippled like water. Suddenly, I was looking at a scene from my past. My office, where I sat with Tyler during one of our sessions. I watched as I gently encouraged him to draw his feelings. This was the day before everything fell apart. Before David's accusations. "You could have handled it differently," said my reflection. "You could have seen the signs." I pulled my hand away and the image vanished. Another mirror showed a future that never happened. Emma as a teenager, healthy and laughing, while an older version of me watched her with pride. This could have been real, that reflection told me, if you'd noticed her symptoms sooner. "Stop it," I said, my voice breaking. "Please stop." I turned away, only to face another mirror showing me at the cabin, but different. In this version, I wasn't alone. A small boy sat at the kitchen table, one of the feral children from my research, now somehow in my care. "You could still help them," this reflection said, "the ones everyone else has given up on." I kept walking down the hallway, trying to ignore the voices from the mirrors. Some were kind, others cruel. Some showed me saving children, others showed me failing them. In one particularly horrible mirror, I saw myself giving up completely, ending my own life in despair. "That's not me," I said firmly to that reflection. "I would never do that." The reflection just smiled sadly. "Are you sure? How much more can you take, Sarah?" At the end of the hallway, I found a door. Desperate to escape the mirrors and their voices, I pushed it open and stumbled through. I found myself back in the cabin's living room, but it was different now. Every wall was covered with mirrors of different shapes and sizes. Even the ceiling had mirrors hanging from it. In the center of the room stood a little girl with her back to me. My breath caught in my throat. The blonde hair, the small shoulders. She looked just like Emma, I whispered. The girl turned around, but it wasn't Emma. It wasn't a child at all. It was a small mirror, about the size of a child, standing on its own. In it, I saw myself as I had been the day Emma died. Broken, defeated, my world shattered. "Why are you doing this to me?" I asked the mirrors surrounding me. A voice answered, but it seemed to come from all the mirrors at once. "We're not doing anything to you, Sarah. We're just showing you the truth, all the truths you've been hiding from yourself." I sank to my knees in the middle of the room, surrounded by dozens of versions of myself. Some were crying with me. Others watched coldly. One was laughing. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "We want you to see," the voices replied. "Really see." Suddenly, the mirrors began to change again. Now they weren't showing me. They were showing my patients, all the children I had worked with over the years. There was Lily, who didn't speak for the first 6 months of therapy, and Marcus, who had been locked in a closet for most of his childhood, and dozens of others. Some I had helped, some I had failed, but something was different about them in the mirrors. They all looked directly at me, their eyes following me as I moved around the room, and then I realized the mirrors weren't just showing my memories of these children. Somehow they were showing me how the children saw me. Some looked at me with love and gratitude, others with fear or disappointment, and some, the ones I thought I'd helped the most, looked at me with something worse, pity, as if they had been the ones trying to save me, not the other way around. "I don't understand," I said, turning in a slow circle to take in all the mirrors. "You will," the voices promised. "Soon you will understand everything." And as I watched, the children in the mirrors began to change. Their faces melted and reformed, becoming my face, dozens of Sarahs, all watching me with knowing eyes. I felt the room begin to spin around me, the mirrors blurring together. The last thing I saw before everything went black was my own face, multiplied endlessly, watching me fall. I woke up on the living room floor. Sunlight streamed through the windows, touching my face with warmth. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then I remembered the mirrors. I sat up quickly, looking around. The walls were bare, no mirrors, no reflections, just the ordinary cabin I had rented. "It was just a nightmare," I whispered, relief washing over me. I pressed my hands to my face and took a deep breath. But when I lowered my hands, I noticed something on the coffee table that hadn't been there before. A small hand mirror with a silver handle. My hand shook as I reached for it. I should have thrown it across the room. I should have run out of the cabin and never looked back. Instead, I picked it up and looked into it. My reflection stared back, normal at first. Then it spoke. "You didn't imagine last night, Sarah." I didn't drop the mirror. Somehow I'd been expecting this. "What's happening to me?" I asked. My reflection smiled. "You're finally seeing clearly. For years, you've been hiding from yourself, pretending to be whole when you're really broken into pieces." "I'm not broken," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "Aren't you? Since Emma died, you've been splitting yourself into different versions. The dedicated doctor, the grieving mother, the falsely accused victim, the researcher hiding from the world. Which one is the real Sarah Nightshade?" I had no answer. "Maybe all of them are real," the reflection continued, "or none of them. That's what you need to find out." I set the mirror down carefully. "And if I refuse, if I just leave this place?" My reflection laughed. "You can't run from your own mind, Sarah. We'll follow you wherever you go." I got up and walked to the kitchen, desperate for coffee and something normal. But when I opened the refrigerator, the inside was mirrored. When I turned on the faucet, the water reflected my face. Even the toaster showed a distorted version of me in its shiny surface. There was no escaping the mirrors. I decided to focus on work. Maybe if I kept my mind busy, the mirrors would leave me alone. I opened my laptop, but the screen was black and reflective. I could see myself in it, but this reflection looked angry. "You're wasting time," it said. "Stop hiding in your research." I slammed the laptop shut and grabbed my car keys. I needed to get out, to talk to a real person, to make sure I wasn't losing my mind completely. But when I opened the front door, I found myself stepping back into the mirrored hallway from the night before. "No," I gasped, backing away. "This isn't real." "It's as real as you make it," said a voice behind me. I turned to find myself face to face with myself, but not a reflection this time. Another Sarah standing in my living room wearing the clothes I had worn the day Emma died. "You're not real," I said, backing away. "I'm as real as you are," she replied. "I'm the part of you that never left that hospital room, the part that died with Emma." Another voice came from the kitchen. "And I'm the part that threw herself into work, trying to save every child, to make up for the one you couldn't save." A third Sarah stepped out of the bedroom, this one looking professional and cold. "I'm the part that built walls to keep everyone out, that stopped feeling anything to avoid feeling pain." More Sarahs appeared, stepping out of reflective surfaces around the cabin. Each one represented a different piece of me: my ambition, my compassion, my anger, my guilt, my love for Emma, my fear of failure. I pressed my back against the wall as they surrounded me. "What do you want?" I asked again, my voice barely a whisper. "We want to be whole again," they said in unison. "But first, you need to face what you've been running from." The Sarah who represented my guilt stepped forward. "You need to admit the truth about your patients." "What truth?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "That you didn't always help them. Sometimes you made things worse." Memories flashed through my mind. Children whose trauma I had accidentally deepened. Families I had torn apart with my interventions, diagnoses I had gotten wrong. "I did my best," I said weakly. "Your best wasn't always good enough," said another Sarah. "And sometimes you knew what you were doing was wrong, but you did it anyway because you thought you knew better than everyone else." The accusations hit me like physical blows. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by all the versions of myself I had created and then tried to ignore. "We're going to show you everything now," they said together. "Every mistake, every failure, every child you couldn't save." And as they closed in around me, I realized I had nowhere left to hide, not even from myself. The many versions of myself led me to the living room, which had transformed again. Now it looked like a courtroom with mirrors for walls. Each mirror showed a different child I had treated over the years. One Sarah, wearing a judge's robe, sat at a table at the front of the room. "The trial of Dr. Sarah Nightshade will now begin," she announced, her voice echoing in the mirrored chamber. "Trial?" I asked, confused. "What am I being accused of?" "Playing God with children's lives," said another Sarah, this one dressed like a lawyer. "Believing you could fix what was broken when sometimes you only made things worse." I was guided to a chair in the center of the room. All around me, the mirrors showed my patients watching. Some looked sad, others angry. A few seemed sympathetic. "First witness," called the judge. The mirror directly in front of me rippled, and suddenly I was looking at Jamie, the last child I had tried to help before retreating to the cabin. "Tell Woods what happened, Jamie," the judge said. Jamie's voice was small but clear. "Dr. Sarah tried to help me. She said my nightmares would go away if I talked about them, but talking made them worse. I started seeing the bad things even when I was awake." I wanted to explain, to defend myself, but no words came out. "And what happened after that?" asked the prosecutor, Sarah. "They gave me new medicine and a new doctor," Jamie said. "The nightmares still come, but not as much." The judge nodded. "Next witness." The mirrors shifted, and now Tyler was looking at me, the boy whose case had destroyed my career. "Tyler," said the judge gently, "did Dr. Sarah ever touch you inappropriately?" "No," Tyler said firmly. "She was nice. She helped me." Relief flooded through me. "You see," I finally managed to say, "the accusations were false." "But," Tyler continued, "she did tell my parents I was getting better when I wasn't. She promised them I would be normal again." The prosecutor, Sarah, turned to me. "Is this true? Did you give his parents false hope?" I looked down at my hands. "I believed he could get better." "But you knew the odds. You knew his trauma was too deep, too early in his development. You knew he would likely never fully recover, yet you promised his parents a complete healing." "I wanted to believe it was possible," I whispered. "You lied to them," the prosecutor said flatly, "and you lied to yourself." More witnesses appeared in the mirrors, child after child, case after case. Some testified that I had helped them. Others spoke of how my treatments had failed, how my promises had been empty. Then came the case I had been dreading. Emma, my daughter, appeared in the largest mirror, forever 5 years old. She didn't speak. She just looked at me with sad eyes. You missed the early signs of her illness, the prosecutor Sarah said. You were so busy saving other children that you didn't see your own daughter was sick until it was too late. That's not fair, I said, tears streaming down my face. The doctor said her disease was hard to detect, that there was nothing I could have done. But you'll never know for sure, will you? The prosecutor asked. You'll always wonder if you could have saved her if you'd paid more attention. I couldn't answer. The doubt had lived in my heart since the day Emma died. The judge Sarah looked at me with cold eyes. Dr. Nightshade, you stand accused of hubris, of believing you could save children when sometimes they were beyond saving, of pushing too hard when you should have accepted limitations, of using your patience to fill the hole left by your daughter's death. That's not true, I said, but even to my own ears, the denial sounded hollow. The evidence suggests otherwise. The judge continued. You mortgaged your home to fund treatments for children whose cases were hopeless. You worked yourself to exhaustion. You ignored warnings from colleagues. You weren't just trying to help these children. You were trying to undo Emma's death through them. The truth of her words hit me like a physical blow. I had been using these children, hadn't I? Each one I saved was a small victory against the death that had taken my daughter. Each failure was another loss I couldn't bear. What's the sentence? I asked quietly. The judge looked around at all the mirrors, at all the children watching. That depends on you, she said. Are you ready to face the truth about yourself, about what you've done, both good and bad? I looked at the faces in the mirrors. My patients, my colleagues, Emma, all the versions of myself I had created to avoid dealing with my pain and guilt. Yes, I finally said, I'm ready. The judge nodded, and all the mirrors in the room began to crack, thin lines spreading across each surface like spider webs. Then it's time to see what's on the other side of the glass, she said. And as the mirrors shattered around me, I felt myself falling through darkness, surrounded by glittering shards of my own reflection. I was falling through darkness, surrounded by broken mirror pieces. Each shard showed a fragment of my life. A smile. Here a tear, there a child's hand reaching for mine. Then I landed, softly on what felt like solid ground. I opened my eyes to find myself in a circular room with a single mirror in the center. This mirror was different from the others. Its surface rippled like water, and a soft light glowed from within it. I approached it cautiously. Instead of showing my reflection, it showed something impossible, a view of myself from the outside, as if someone else was watching me. What is this? I asked the empty room. The truth, replied a voice that was both mine and not mine. It seemed to come from the mirror itself. No more fragments, no more hiding. I knelt before the mirror and looked deeper into it. The scene shifted, showing me moments from my life, both the ones I was proud of and the ones I wanted to forget. I saw myself holding Emma the day she was born. I saw her funeral. I saw my first patient, a boy who hadn't spoken in 3 years until I found a way to reach him. I saw the children I had failed, the ones whose problems were beyond my ability to fix. I tried my best, I whispered. Yes, said the voice from the mirror, but your best was filtered through your own pain. You tried to save these children, partly to save yourself. Is that so wrong? I asked. To find healing by helping others? No, the voice said gently. But pretending you were only helping them, never admitting you needed healing too. That's where you went wrong. You became so focused on being the perfect therapist, the savior, that you couldn't admit your own brokenness. The images in the mirror shifted again, showing me the cabin, the many mirrors, the different versions of myself. None of this is real, is it? I asked. The mirrors, the trial, it's all happening in my mind. Does that make it less true? The voice asked. I thought about this. No, I finally admitted. It's all true, even if it's only happening in my head. The mirror's surface became still, and now it showed my reflection again, but not fragmented or distorted. Just me as I truly was, tired, sad, broken in places but still whole. What happens now? I asked. That depends on you, my reflection said. You can keep hiding from yourself, keep pretending you're only the helper, never the one who needs help. Or you can accept all the parts of yourself, the healer and the wounded, the savior and the one who needs saving. I reached out and touched the mirror's surface. It felt warm under my fingertips. And if I accept, what then? Then you can truly help others, my reflection said. Not from a place of trying to fix yourself through them, but from a place of shared humanity, of knowing that we're all broken and healing at the same time. The mirror began to glow brighter, its light filling the room. Choose, my reflection urged. Who do you want to be? I closed my eyes and thought of all the children I had treated, of Emma, of myself. I want to be whole, I said. I want to accept that I couldn't save Emma, that I can't save everyone, that sometimes my best isn't enough, and that's okay. And, prompted the voice, and I want to keep trying anyway, I continued, not to fix myself or undo the past, but because helping others is part of who I am, even when it's hard, even when I fail. The light from the mirror grew so bright, I had to shield my eyes. I felt a warmth spreading through me, as if the light was entering my body, filling all the broken places inside me. Open your eyes, Sarah, said the voice, and now it was clearly my own voice, no longer coming from the mirror, but from within me. I opened my eyes and found myself back in my bedroom at the cabin. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The mirrors were gone, except for the normal one on my closet door, showing just my ordinary reflection. I got out of bed, half expecting the strange events to start again, but everything seemed normal. Had it all been a dream? A hallucination brought on by stress and grief? I walked to the bathroom. The mirror there showed nothing unusual, just me looking tired but somehow lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. As I turned to leave, I noticed something on the counter. A small hand mirror with a silver handle, like the one from my vision. I picked it up carefully and looked into it. My reflection smiled back at me but didn't speak. Instead, the surface of the mirror rippled once, and then showed a brief image. A child I didn't recognize, sitting alone in what looked like a hospital room. The image faded, leaving just my reflection again. I understood then. The mirrors weren't gone, they had just changed. Instead of showing me my own fragmented self, they would now show me others who needed help. Not so I could save them and fix myself, but so I could offer what I had learned through my own broken journey. I set the mirror down and went to my laptop. I opened a new document and began to type. Case study: the therapeutic value of acknowledging the healer's wounds in child psychology. As I wrote, I glanced occasionally at Emma's photo on my nightstand. For the first time in years, I could look at her without feeling like I had failed her. The pain was still there. It would always be there. But it no longer defined me. I was Dr. Sarah Nightshade, child psychologist. I was Emma's mother. I was both healer and wounded, helper and human. And somewhere in the space between those identities, I had finally found myself, whole and real, reflected not in mirrors, but in the lives I touched, and the truth I finally had the courage to face.